failure is a great, powerful source. Like, you can't let it consume you, but you have to harness the power and the energy it provides. You're going to have turnover. Are we willing to have these problems? Short-term pain for the long-term game. Our training system has to be the same no matter who's running it. Growth and comfort can never coexist. So it's like, get uncomfortable. Expecting this to just happen when this happens, like, no, other things are going to take place too, that you need to adapt to, and that's a good thing.
Sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. All right, guys, we're back with another episode of Table Talk. Today, my guest is Marek Health. He is the founder, owner, and CEO of Power Strength Training Systems. Has 4 gyms in Michigan, and we'll get into your demographics with their athletes and lifestyle clients, but it's kind of like athletes and lifestyle clients, which we're going to get into that. Mark is also a business mentor and consultant. So a lot of what we're going to be talking today is going to be some of his origin story, but then we're going to get into some business topics, because a lot of the people who follow the podcast either want to open a gym, which we may convince them not to, or, have some business that they're trying to develop and scale. Mark has scaled very well, especially over the past several years, or have a side job or a gig that they're trying to be able to expand and grow. So a lot of these topics that we're going to get into are going to be specific to the gym, but they're also very universal to wink into things like core values and the importance of all those. And as we go down this pipe of 20 different topics that I have listed here. So because you established the gym in 2011. So before that, I believe you were a trainer, right? And your father taught for 35 years? 39 years,
yeah.
Psychology professor?
Psychology professor.
Okay, and he worked more than one job?
Yes.
All right, so what were the jobs that he did?
He was a psychology professor for 39 years, and then he has his own business as well, his own private practice as a counselor, as a psychologist, that owns a counseling center, specialized in family marital psychology and counseling. And he still is doing that. He's going to turn 72, and he's still doing that. He's had that for, I think, 46 or 47 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the first 9 years of my life, he grew up on a farm, inherited that from his parents, my grandparents. They passed away when I was really young, inherited that. And between working both of those, he was down there helping keep the farm going for about 8 or 9 years after they passed away, or for the first 8 or 9 years of my life. So, which I don't know how he did it all. But a 40-hour work week isn't the norm where I come from, and that was never the case. And then my mother was also a physical education teacher, actually, at the high school. So she was a teacher as well for 9 or 10 years. And then when she had me and my brother, I have a twin brother, then she hung it up, and so she stayed home with us. But that's the original story of my father, and really just setting the example of work ethic, but and many more lessons with it. So
college was pretty much in your track from the very jump.
They're both educators, so it was like, education was always a huge thing for them, but it wasn't like tons of pressure. It was just kind of like, hey, we're going to raise you to do your very best. You've been given a lot. You got to have every opportunity, make the most of it. We expect you to do your best, and your best is good enough. So if you're doing your best, everything will take care of itself.
So who were you in high school? Like the jock, the nerd? I mean,
no, I was a jock for sure. I was a jock for sure. Played multiple sports, football, basketball, ran track for a few years. When I'm younger years growing up, you're playing soccer, you're playing baseball, you're playing all those sports, right? So definitely more on the jock scene for sure. Football I loved, but I also played basketball my whole high school career. And then fast forward a few years when I went to college, I went to the school my dad taught at, which was right across the street from my high school. So it was just kind of like, it was a little anticlimactic, a little reluctant to go there because they didn't have football. Mm-hmm. So we explored the football scene a little bit. Wasn't the cards, made perfect sense just to go to the school that I kind of grew up at because my dad was there. A little reluctant to do that, but I ended up playing on the JV basketball team there for a couple of years, which that's kind of my inside claim to fame joke because I don't look like a basketball player. And so that's like the running joke that we always have. But yeah, always sports was always ingrained in me because, again, more so from my mom, from the physical education side. But also my dad, again, was teaching all the time. He'd take us, me and my brother, up to the college, get us in the weight room when he was in there kind of doing some cardio, doing some machines. But at an early age, I got exposed to just being in the weight room and testing every machine, figuring it out, opening the gym up, let us go play basketball, that kind of stuff. So those are my big influences growing up.
When you went into college, what did you think you wanted to do?
No idea. No idea. Got into my sophomore year, and they're just like, you got to pick a major. I'm like, well, I like to work out. This has exercise. Maybe I can do this. This is back in 2005 to 2009. So really kind of not really sure. And then you got to pick a major. All right, fine. I'll pick exercise science. What does that entail? Maybe I can go get my master's, and maybe I can go be a college strength coach, right? The idea of the private sector was never even on my radar, really. Mm-hmm. I didn't grow up going to gyms. There's health clubs around us. Like, we do that a little bit, but nothing crazy. Just with my buddies here and there. So that was really foreign to me. But I want to back up a little bit, because I said I was reluctant to go to the college that I went to just because it was anticlimactic. There was no football. Years later, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because by being there, I got into about my junior year. New football coach at the high school, so got a new job. Hey guys, call up me and my brother. You want to coach football? Yeah, sure. Never thought about coaching really, but it was a natural fit.
This is while you were in college?
This is when I was in college, right? So I started coaching when I was in college. But long story short, showed up first day of summer practice, summer camp, kicking off the summer. Talked to one of the assistant coaches there who I just met. But he said, hey, where do you guys go to school? I said, what are you studying? I said, exercise science. He goes, oh, have you heard of Dave Tate and elitefts and Joe DeFranco? I said, no. He's like, go look him up. So I went right back to I was living on campus, right back to my on-campus apartment, looked him up, and that was the origin story. Mm-hmm. That was the inspiration. I was like, that's what I'm going to do. When I saw Joe D's montage video, like so many strength coaches from that era did, they said, I'm going to do that. Like I said, I'm going to do that. And then it's like, well, how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to read everything I can. Joe's blog, elitefts. Rest is history. Mm-hmm. So
it's, how long did it take you from then to when you started working with clients?
Good question. It's one of those, I was in college, and again, going back, this is why it was also one of the best things for us, because it was a small school. And I'm a planner. I like to see the whole board, so to speak, even back then. So I knew planning my classes my freshman year, I was like, I'm going to plan this so well. So my senior year, I basically have nothing to do. I want the easiest schedule my senior year possible. And I did that, but I had time on my hands. But then I'm also out coaching high school football. I went to they dubbed him the strength coach, but he was a full-time athletic trainer. They added this role on top of the guy. And I knew him from just growing up, but also being in school. And he was a professor of mine. I said, hey, can I intern for you? Because he had never had an intern. I said, can I intern for you as on the strength conditioning side? Can I write programs? Can I walk these athletes through it, the college teams? He's like, yeah, sure. Just run everything by me and I'll be good to go. Thankfully, he was very passive with allowing me to do that. And so I was in college working with college athletes. Again, this is a small NAI D2 school, but in the gym, showing people how to do things.
Was that what you thought it was going to be when you started doing it?
No. I was just like, but again, this time I'm reading, I'm studying. This is right before, so that was right between my junior and senior year. I found Elite. I found DeFranco's, right? So I was like, I know, hey, I'm going to make opportunities out of this. So I asked to do that. Then of course I want to test different programs. I want to test my skill as a communicator, skill as a coach, right? Developing the coach's eye. And that's what we talk about all the time now too, is like the difference between coaches is reps. They got to develop that coach's eye. And I was doing that. I didn't realize I was doing it at the time, but I had that underneath my belt. And then of course I'm the meathead on campus, right? I'm the meathead guy. I'm always there. My buddies, hey, write me a program. Sure, I'll write you a program. Sure, I'll test. I wanted the practice, right? But I also wanted the results. I wanted to say, hey, I did this. Make sure you tell everybody about it. Help them, support them, all that kind of stuff. But really, just find my legs as a coach. And so I was doing that. And then this is still my senior year. I still had time on my hands because I'm taking like golf, and my schedule was awesome. But I was like, I got more in me. So I signed up for another internship as a local Parisi in town. And that's when I got exposed to like a Martin Rooney, and like the experience hands-on was awful because just for a number of things. And I learned from that experience now from the internships that we do. But the best thing about it was I have all these resources. I can sit there and learn. I can take notes. I can do all that. So the internship was my first, experience into the private sector, into what else is this? I've read about it. I heard about it now. How can I go live in that, so to speak? And so that's around 2009. And
well, real quick, because that's kind of where perception hits reality, right? Because you're reading in the articles and you see all this stuff and you see the highlight clips, and they are highlight clips.
100%. And it was my first thing of like, I'm reading, I'm studying. Martin Rooney's telling me how it should look. And I remember this vividly, and I talk to our interns about this all the time. I'm sitting there watching the video of how something should be done from the source, right? Of how, because he was the training guy at the time for them. And I look out the window and I'm like, that's not being done the right way, you know? So that's big scaling franchises, right? Multiple locations, a lot of locations, especially at that time. And I'm like, man, I'm never gonna, it kind of put a bad taste in my mouth from a franchise perspective at that time without even really knowing it. But I'm like, how can you not see this? How can you not have quality control in place? And again, I say that now, looking back on it. At the time, I didn't think that through, but it's like that has led me to kind of what we do now as we scale our facilities. But the perception is reality. And I was like, all right, I got a little taste. What's next? And this is where Elite came in, is so valuable. I think this is what's, I'm sure you hear all the time. So I want to reiterate again, the impact that you have made in so many people, including myself. So for example, I'm coaching football. And this is right before I started volunteering as a strength coach there, which is I can talk about in a little bit. But coaching football, I knew I wanted to open a gym. A guy that was writing on your site, Rick Damon, it was near Pittsburgh in Monaca, Pennsylvania. He was a football coach and then opened his gym. And I'm like, man, like that's exactly the path I want to do. So I started emailing him randomly. Thank goodness he kept replying. I remember emailing like 6-7 months in a row, back and forth. We're like strength coach pen pals, right? So, and then finally he's like, you know what? I got lots of, invested a lot of time and energy into this. Hey, why don't we just come out, pay me and I'll meet with you. I said, absolutely. So, I mean, he didn't charge me enough. Looking back on that, didn't charge me at all. I spent a day or two with him, and that was a huge launch point in terms of opening my first facility with that. But that just comes from learning.
Now, when you were thinking about opening a gym, what did you think that was going to look like before you spoke to him?
Man, it was, first of all, I graduated and I was like, all right, what's next? I know what I wanted to do, but I didn't have I wouldn't say the motivation, but I definitely was like, all right, what's the next step? Right. So I applied. This is the thing about Parisi. Like I applied there. I applied at the health club it was located at. Nobody calls me back. Nobody even gives me the time of day. Tried to apply some other places around town. I just wanted to I wanted to work the front desk at a gym. Thank goodness nobody called me back, right? Which I'm in this limbo, right? I'm kind of not necessarily, career purgatory of like, what do I do? I'm just kind of waiting phase, And again, I'm still young. So again, it's 22, 21.
Did you kind of know you wanted to be private sector?
Yeah, this stage. At this stage, yeah, I would say yes and no. I still thought like, maybe I just need to go get my higher education, right? Maybe I need to go get my master's. Which I didn't really know you're supposed to like study for that, the GRE. Like I found out like a day or two before. I'm like, what the heck? Like, how could I have my dad be a professor and not tell me about that? But again, same thing. He's like, you'll figure it out. Like, why do I got to hold your hand? So long story short, that was in the cards. That was a good turning point for me. It's like, yeah, this is not going to education. You're going to go do your own thing.
I'm speaking more as like the strength coach side, universe, because that's one path. Yeah. It's a different path, different path. And there's a private. Yeah. So you already had eliminated that you wanted to do that path. Yeah. I kind of got a glimpse of it just working, literally just volunteering through my internship in a small school. It's like, you know what? I like living here. I want to stay here. There's no opportunities here. There's some Division II schools around us or small colleges, but like this isn't a career path. I want to go do my own thing, especially the more I got into Joe DeFranco was obviously a huge influence on me. You mentioned him already. They're kind of painting the picture of how to do that locally. And I'm also then volunteering now as a strength coach in the high school. So the team I was coaching for, I said, hey, can I do this? And I thought they really liked me. Oh yeah, he's smart. He can do this. What I know now about high school weight rooms, and for the most part, especially back then, is like, this guy wants to be here. Let him do it, So I did it. Thank goodness. So that was a huge experience for me to launch that. Cause not only that, like coaching in general, coaching a sport, all levels, freshman, JV, varsity on the football side of things, but also then being in the weight room with those kids, understanding administrations, understanding parents, understanding how coaches work within the school system, all that stuff. Like that was super valuable for what I do now. And I think that's a lesson too. Like if someone's waiting to get started, it's like, go volunteer, be a coach for a year or two, be in the weight room, volunteer, be on the sidelines, do whatever you got to do.
the network you make, but also the experiences you gather, understanding these different demographics, right? Demographics, avatar, ideal client, like understanding how they all think. That was all didn't know at the time, but I'm taking it all in and have that knowledge now I use that. I draw from that.
Well, I think some people also miss the point that time that you're doing that, even if you really didn't want to do that moving forward, the lessons that you're learning doing it, within that setting may factor in tenfold, 10 years down the line. And even if it's something that the person really, really, I don't want to say hate, but dislikes doing, they may be in an administrative structure that has the framework that they're going to be able to look back on to be able to apply later.
100%. And it's hard to explain it. That's why it's like, oh, well, it's easy for you. No, like I was there a lot and I enjoyed it. But I remember I even had it worked out the second year. I was about the third year, the third official year I was doing it. I was like, I got to make some money. Like, can I charge kids to do this? I had it all approved from the administration, coaching staff, everybody. And then the day before I was supposed to start, one parent complained about it. And I was like, all right, like I can't charge anybody, but this is it. Like, this is the last off season. I'm going to do this. I gotta get out. In the meantime, I know your story too. Like I was bouncing in nightclubs, I was working my way up doing that. I was bouncing in nightclubs because of the schedule I wanted, because I could work at night and I could study and read and be at the high school during the day, do my own training as well. And then I also worked in a mental health facility, lockdown facility for kids, basically just working security. So I say all that really because I'm not going to get paid at the high school doing this now. I'm bouncing in nightclubs for, multiple years. Like that's getting kind of old. I'm in a mental health facility all day. So I'd be going from mental health facility to bouncing. That's a lot of time to be on edge, right? And be aware. And that was the push I needed to like, okay, I'm going to open this thing. Right. And then, so fast forward a little bit more too, again, to loop back you and Elite into this. And I was talking to Rick, and I'm studying. I'm studying like crazy. Every dollar I'm spending, I outfitted my gym with equipment from all over, so I could practice on my own, rehearse whatever I wanted to do. But then also like every ebooks were big back then, ebooks and every article. So I could read for 3 or 4 hours a day, read this, go to this, and then because I couldn't really travel to the sources, but when I had the chance to travel to the sources, I would go to the source. The first Learn to Train seminar you had, I say we, because I drove down. It was a 1 day, long day, drove down and back. And I'm like, that was eye opening. That was January of 2011, right? 13 years ago. And then I came back in May as well for the second one, and we opened the gym in June. So it was that was the period of learning, of growth, of like, all right, I got the mentorship privately. I can read everything. Now I'm going to the sources and bumping shoulders with people in in-person events, but I think are the most valuable thing out there still to this day.
So where did you get the capital to open the first one?
We did it nuts and bolts, right? And I started with a buddy of mine. The story goes really like backing up. And he was a good college athlete at Division II level, but a very good prospect and for football. But we grew up together, and I remember, like, I don't remember this, but he said like one night he was going around we were playing cards in my garage one summer before his last year, and he's going around different facilities around the country, the top facilities to explore combine training, right? And I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm looking into doing this, and I went off on a tangent of why I'm passionate about that and all that. He got drafted third round, went on to and after this first year, there's the lockdown. So it was like 2010, 2011. There was a lockdown, but he called me up and he's like, hey, you still think about opening up that gym? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, oh yeah, remember you said you were going to do all that? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I literally bought an ebook of like how to open your garage gym. I'm reading it as he calls me. And I'm like, yeah, I'll call you right back. Because I don't believe big things in life, I don't think are by chance. I think there's a higher power. So I said, I'll call you back in 5 minutes. So I sat there, thought about it, said a quick prayer, and I said, I'll call you back. And I called him back and I said, yeah, I got a plan. Let's do it my way. That's all I'm going to do. I never considered having a partner. And we didn't, even with his background, we didn't go big. We went very small on the cheap. We literally put the stuff that was in my garage, half of it went into the gym. And we kind of made up the difference.
How big was it, or how small?
1,500. We say 1,500, but training wise space, it was much smaller. And we did it on the cheap, maybe 20 grand, maybe 20 grand, 20, 25 grand to just outfit it, and bought a few new things and all that, but it was on the cheap and it looked that way too. And, but went small, and it was grungy. We put lipstick on a pig is what I said. For sure. But
how did you get the clients?
I was coaching. So all those kids that I was coaching, this goes back to prove your point too. When's the payoff going to be? And I need to make some money. Even the money I was going to charge them wasn't going to be a lot. So I did it for free, And the second I was opening this gym, the coach was like, hey, you can train with Mark. Because I was the strength guy for the school. He was like, you go train with Mark. You don't have to go to the team workouts. And so I had day one, had 20 plus kids there that I've been working with for the last few years. And from there, like if you have one client, you can market that. You can market the results. I had way more, and I had the results to do it. And again, that's why I'm learning. I was talking to guys like Rick, and I was talking to these other mentors of mine. They're like, get a testimonial, get their parents' testimonial, put a camera on, market this way. And my first introduction to like just marketing, but really sparking that word of mouth referral, sparking that, just sharing results of what we were doing. It was unique at the time, especially in our area. That's why I wanted to do it in the first place. Like my brother and I, like I said, we're very competitive. We did everything we were told to do. We did the extra stuff, and we still had untapped, unused potential. And that kind of put a, chip on your shoulder of like, I don't want any kid with our level of focus and drive and work ethic to not maximize what they're going to be doing. And there was nothing around in our area to do that. And so that's why that was the initial motivation to do it in our area too. So it was unique. And especially at that time too. And again, back then I would take, if you look really back in the depths of Power Strength, you'll see all these group pictures. And it's like, well, why are you just showing pictures of these kids standing around at the end of the workot? Because back then on Facebook, I could tag each one of them individually and show up to all their friends too. A little bit different now, but that's why I did it. So it was one of those things where we had clients on day one.
So from the jump, you had to break even.
Yeah.
Right from the gate. Were you?
Yeah. Yes and no.
Well, without paying yourself.
Yeah. I didn't pay myself, and we could pay. Again, it was very cheap, especially now looking back on it. But it was still, we were almost all those athletes were football players. So we opened in June, July. Oh, this is easy. This is really good. Why is business so hard? August hit, August, September, October, and we were struggling. And I remember saying, hey, we need some more. We need some juice. We don't have it. And this goes back to my initial. That's the thought of like who you keep in your circle is so important. A lady who was a parent of the kids, and I went to actually high school with her oldest son. So, and he brought his younger brother to the gym, and she's like, why am I paying to go to this gym, this garage, right? When they go to high school for free. And she just didn't understand it until she came by, and she's like, oh, this is different. She saw the results in her son. So then after a few months of him training with us, she was like, well, how are you managing this? Like, who's doing your books? Who's doing your accounting? Long story short, she was a very good accountant, very good CPA. And I said, really nobody. And she came at the perfect time to say, well, I can help you with that. And at the time we were just a month or two away from getting this football rush back through the fall. And I told her, I said, look, I mentioned it to the partner at the time. Nothing really became of it. And I said, look, we're struggling. She goes, why don't I just pay for him in full for the year? I said, you do that? That's an option? Never even crossed my mind. She was like, yeah, no problem. And so that got us out of that hump, and for us is history with that. But she became my first early business mentor. Yeah. Yeah.
So from that point, because right where you're talking right now is where a lot fail.
Totally.
Right. So that mentoring there, and you're also traveling around doing mentors and certifications or whatever we want to call those back in the day.
Yeah.
So learning from other people. Where was the majority of the marketing to be able to get the clients in? You said Facebook and tagging the people.
Yeah.
But that's here nor there, especially back then.
Yeah. The best thing I did, and this is why, again, we can talk about partnerships and stuff like that. And I think for us, it worked out well because we were both local. We had big networks just personally, especially when we combined those. That was the biggest powerful force we had, was just, we were from there. I never left. I went to high school, college there, was coaching there for years, so the networking, the referral game was huge, I didn't answer the phone for the first 3 years. I don't recommend doing this at all, especially in today's world. And I talk with gym owners about this all the time, but legitimately, I didn't answer the phone for 3 years. And they're like, well, why did you do that? It sounds, that's crazy. It's like, because number one, I was a one-man show. I was the owner operator, sun up, sundown, everything, right? I'm wearing every hat. And I just didn't want to be on the phone. And I know this because I got on the phone and people, I didn't know how, I had no sales skills. I had no sales skills, didn't know how to move people to a decision, didn't know how to get off the phone to begin with. And so I just put on the answer machine, like, hey, if you're an interested athlete or parent, go to the website. Here's the website, fill out the contact form. We'll get back to you about scheduling your free workout. That was it, so, and it worked, but it created this velvet rope even more. It actually created a bigger buzz because it's like, how do I get a hold of that? I got to stop by. I got to do all this stuff. But it was that word of mouth. It was that networking. And again, it was results, but the biggest thing too, is I think people maybe bypass this, especially young trainers. I put the time in building relationships, because that's what I did. I truly cared about the kids. I did this at the most perfect time in my life too. Again, I opened the gym when I was 24. I was down here at 23, for those 2 other seminars, turned 24 and I opened the gym, and I had that was my life. I had nowhere else to be. I wanted to do it the right way. If someone's going to pay me especially to work with them, then they got me all the time, and I think that paid off, right? And again, that has to adapt. The more mature the business gets, the bigger it gets, of course. But now, even I say this to my own guys now, it's like, your job is to build that relationship. We have other people to do these other things. Your job is just to do this. So as long as I know it's got to be taken care of at a high level, then I feel good about it. If it's not, that's a totally different story.
When did you begin to pivot your education from the training and programming, which is the fun, nerdy stuff to be able to do, into the business side, which is the side that most people don't want to mess around with?
About 4 years in. And I shouldn't say it was all, again, I was in the depths of the training world for sure. I was reading everything I could, I was never a competitive powerlifter, right? I loved, but we used these movements to train athletes, especially athletes we were working with. This is the best way to how to do this exercise. I'm going to the best people how to teach it. Great. Well, now how do I bridge that gap to make it more athletic, so to speak? And that's why Joe D was so pivotal for me, because he did that with West Side for Skinny Bastards, right? How do I take this concept and continue to do it? But also, if I'm teaching this one concept, I need to learn from the source. And then how do I blend this all together? And that's where guys even a Zach Evanesh or James Smitty Smith, who's a big mentor of mine too, and Smitty's unique stuff. How do I blend this all together to create the true system, right? But then through all this networking and mentorship, there was some business sprinkled in. Like I said, with Rick, Jody would put some stuff out. There's some there back then too. There's also business stuff on Elite that you can go down the rabbit hole on that, learn a little bit of it. But I was still heavily training focused. I was training all day, right? I was still a coach all day. And then what I learned was just kind of oh, maybe someday, or, but I think too, people they're not comfortable with it, right? They're not, so they kind of shy away from it. And I was the same way. It's oh, I don't really know. So I guess I'll just go back to what I'm comfortable with. Let's just be in the gym. Let's talk about training. Let's go talk about the bench press, because I'm really comfortable doing that. Yeah. I'm not necessarily comfortable talking or exploring, going into that business route. But then going again through these networking, it was through the CPPS certification, Joe and Smitty certification, which I went to 10 times, because I went there. I did some demonstration, wow, you want to coach, you want to do this again? I'm yeah, sure. So I'll teach this move, I'll teach this. And they let me come back, kept letting me come back. I just had to fly to New Jersey and where else they're doing it, right? And so I'll do that. And by doing that, not only was I brushing shoulders with other great coaches and trainers and honing my craft a little bit too, but now it's these guys are business owners. These guys are gym owners. And I'm okay, well, where are you guys learning this stuff? What's going on? Smitty gave me a referral to a different, more business mastermind. And that's when it took off. That was when the rest was history. And it was at the perfect time too, because about 10 years, it was 10 years. I've been in masterminds for 10 years now. And I say I've been in masterminds, that's 4 to 6 times a year I'm traveling somewhere to do it, and made that cadence become a habit, which we can talk about that as well. But about 6 months after I joined that mastermind was when oh, we're going to move this gym. We got to expand. A little premature. We were working on moving this building. We're expanding this facility, which all I really wanted to do. I want to open a small one and expand one time, go bigger. Which again, okay, that's really good. Why do I want to do that? Because that's what some of my mentors did, so that's what I wanted to do too. Exploring disability, long story short, it fell through. And then you're just like, oh man, what are we going to do? We're bursting at the seams. And I think that was going into 2015. I think we grew in 2015 like 40% that year, right? Like, because then we had to go find another building, which it was brand new, it was being built. That's when we kind of dissolved our partnership mutually. He was moving out of town. He was doing well in his career and wasn't involved with the gym anyway, so we dissolved that. Still buddies. We did it the right way too. But it was time to expand, and like we had to invest and pour money into this, and it was risky with that. So just getting into that business side, right?
Well, there's a point where you go from technician to entrepreneur, right? And you have to buy into the entrepreneur as much as you did the technician. And there's a lot of hurdles with that, you know. So how did you work through those hurdles to be able to do that?
It was because again, pivotal point too, because when you start having team members, you start having staff, right? I could sit there and I could hook up the kids. I could give discounts to the kids. It was just me. One time I'm sitting there looking around the gym. It was on a Saturday morning. There's 14 kids there. I remember this vividly. 9 of them were on some sort of discount. And I said, what the heck? Like, this is not right. So we had to do that. But again, it was just me. The second I started having staff, all that stuff has to go away. I have to be, like you said, make that transition to a new role and focus and be the very best I could be with that. It was really...
How did you come to that conclusion, though? Because that's the next area where most people go out of business.
Fear. Like, it was just straight fear. The second I had to get in expand your comfort zone, right? And so exploring that new building, which fell through, it's like you tap into a different way of thinking. You have to ask different questions. You have to consider different things you never thought of. And I was greener than green looking into that, especially looking back now on some of the commercial real estate investments I made or deals we've been a part of as we make these gyms and all that. So it's like, but that was my foot in the door. Right. But then also the second we expanded, now it's a business. We have bills to pay. Like, we're not in a little garage, paying whatever it was, $1,500 a month. We're in a big facility. We had to build out. We had to invest in. Like, we have a staff this is their sole job now. It was straight fear of like, you better become. If you say you want to be the best, I wanted to be the best trainer, but now it's like, I want to be the best operator. I want to be the best business owner, because not just for me, it was for my staff as well. And like many guys too, many trainers, like, hey, it was just fear is a great, powerful source. Like, you can't let it consume you, but you have to harness the power and the energy it provides. I was always fearful of, like, especially back then, like, I didn't pay myself anything, zero. And I kind of wanted it that way. I knew I could ask for help if I needed it, but I wanted to struggle. But then it was like, all right, if I need to make a business, because if my car broke down, what happens? Like, how can I fix this? How will I ever buy a house? I'm living in cheap apartments. How could I buy a nicer apartment? How could I get engaged? How could I get married? What's going to happen when I have kids? Like, what's going to happen? So while I'm big on like doing the best you can day after day, live in the moment, you also have to look ahead of like, all right, well, is this the right model for me? Is this suitable? What's going to happen? And not get this is where anxiety comes from, right? Trying to control the future way too much. Like, again, but like, I'm a big believer now is like, don't suffer imagine troubles. So, but you also have to have a plan. And that's where the model comes in. So for me, it was just like, I'm fearful of this. I got bills to pay. What's going to happen? So it was all in. It's like, I could still coach. I was still coaching a little bit. But again, by that time, what we were doing, I'm pretty good on, like, all right, I'm on autopilot. I got to pour into this business stuff. And that's why, like I mentioned, like, get on the plane, invest in this, invest in the people that already have that knowledge, and leapfrog some of those hard years, or at least when the obstacles come, you have that crutch. You have that person that you can rely on to get you to that next phase and get you through it. And I think that's one of my biggest reasons for success is really like, when problems strike, like, hey, like, minimize the damage. Like, I think that's sometimes when people go wrong. Like, you're going to have problems, but minimize the damage when they do come, and like, or have better direction, do a little better thinking to where you avoid those big mistakes. So people are like, well, how do you do that? It's like, I don't know. I just never like, we made mistakes, don't get me wrong, but it's like the big giant ones that are killers you guys that you really get through. It's like, yeah, let's just try to avoid those as best we can. And then let's show up the day after day, care about people, do a great job, and you're probably going to be in a good spot. Now,
did you have awareness of those big issues that happen just from being to all these mentor groups and hearing everybody else speak about them?
You're exactly right. And I was just talking to the group that I'm working with now too, and like all the guys that, I come across, it's like, so many guys go into these groups, and then I like like smaller groups, focus groups. Everyone gets their time. Everyone's trying to solve that problem. The problem they mistake when they go to these groups is I'm just there for mine and I'm out. I was never like that. I was, again, one of the younger guys in the group. There's guys that were older than me. There are guys that bought the houses. There's guys that had the kids, not successful and not very successful. And so I'm like, then they're dealing with these issues, or they're dealing with client issues, or whatever it is. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, if this was me, then how would I solve this? Or
how did you navigate those groups? Because a lot of them are just bullshit money grabs too.
Totally. I 100% agree. That was the referral was big, so when Smitty says to go do something, I went and did it. And then it's just a matter of having your own filter. Right. And that's like it's like with coaches. That's why I spent so much time studying. I tell them too, it's like, you got to read and study, not just watch 60-second clips on Instagram. Like, go to the source and then develop your filter and spend time developing that filter. Right. We've all done it. I'm going to do this and this and understand the true reason why. But by that time too, like knowing that, because I had that kind of as my compass, as my filter, it's like, I know what people, are you full of shit, or do you mean well, right? And everyone kind of can sense that. So for me, it was just like, I like it. This is fun for me. I like this. I'm going to keep coming back. And then it was just come back, be consistent, come back. And there's many guys that fell off. I'm like, I know enough. I'm like, I never know enough, right? Always a white belt. White belt's the lowest form of beginner's mind, right? So how can we constantly be learning that over and over again? And now it's just part of what I do. And it's a way to kind of keep me on track. But yeah, how to navigate that is
what were some of the big mistakes that you didn't make that you saw that others are doing?
A lot. And I think without getting too specific, like backing up. So for me, when I started the business, it was only athletes, only. And because that's what I like to do, that's what I was comfortable doing, but also it was my original passion. But it was also just me. I didn't want to work sun up to sundown. I wanted to be in there at 3:00, train. I can train all night because I was bouncing, right? We're night owls, right? So it's like, I can train in the afternoon, right? Train myself during the day, but it was like basically a part-time job, which is what training athletes is, by the way. If anyone wants to train athletes, just athletes, you'd be very specific about that. I don't really recommend doing it. But initially, it was, I was like, I want to be the very best, because you can't scale mediocrity. You can't develop mediocrity. And I think that's what many people do, especially in business. And I was at a mastermind, one of my first ones. I remember it vividly. You should train adults. And I'm like, and at the time, we started training adults just because they were banging on the door. And then I say adults, I mean like these were late 20s, early 30s, people that were just still active, like zero marketing, all just coming in our network, right? And I held off about 1.5 years. I turned a lot of people away. Like, no, we only train athletes, which made them want to train with us more, by the way. But they just, hey, we'll train adults, we'll train kids, we'll add this class, we'll do this service, we'll do this. And it's like, you're not good at any of these. It's just, you're literally mediocre across the board. Now you can't charge premium prices. You have to charge lower prices just to compete. And because people's standard of service and value is way higher if you do charge more. So now you got a revolving door of people because you can't meet their expectation, right? So now you're just mediocre across the board. And like, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes people make is like, just be great at a couple of things, 1 or 2 things, build the business around that, and then see what happens. And I dabble with all this stuff. I dabble with all of it too. And that's how I can say that so confidently now. But that's one of the biggest mistakes that guys are making. It's just like, just focus on doing this. We have, again, shiny object syndrome. We want to go do this, especially entrepreneurial ADD, right? Is what we call it, right? They don't want to just focus on what they do best, or they take on that debt. They take on that bigger lease. They take on that space they don't need. And I can say that confidently too. It's like, well, how do you know what they need? It's like, well, what's their business model, right? Are they a large group? Are they a small group? Are they one-on-one? Are they buying equipment they don't need, or are they buying equipment to meet them, to match their model? Or are they just going to have to like, I guess it's like, you have a great system. You're going to have to go a little bit bigger. You're going to have to expand again in a year or two. You're capped out. And that's what so many business owners make right now, or gym owners should say. Mistakes they make now is not knowing their capacity, not knowing their usage, figuring out their price point to make sure like you can only make this much money here consistently. So this is what you can pay your staff, right? This is what you could take home. And is that good for you? Or do you want to have a different plan? And so that type of thinking made me go a little slower. right? And we've scaled a little bit faster now, but early on, it's like, no, let's just do this. Let's do this. Like, I'm not comfortable with that yet. Let's just do this. But it's having that filter. And I think going into, again, I had great mentors that kind of slow me down too, but also going into these groups to see, it's like, yeah, I don't know if I want that problem. I'm not sure I could solve that. I'm going to slow down and think this through.
Well, I think many trainers get stuck in just training. They need revenue.
Yeah.
So they're going to train whoever they can train. Mm-hmm. So they have all these different avatars.
Yep.
Anyhow, mm-hmm. So if your advice is just focus on 2, then it's going to freak them out.
I know.
Because how are they going to pay their bills?
I know. And that's why I said when I started, it was the perfect time, because it didn't need a lot. And so, especially if trainers now if they have a part-time job, keep the part-time job. Well, I got to go all in like as much as you can, but let's be an adult. Let's be responsible. If you have bills to pay, especially if you have families. I did this without a family. I did this without young kids at the time. Like, guys that are going through that, it's like, how do you make this work? And this is why you have to be even smarter with your model, your price point, I think, number one. But because they're going to go do the work. Like, once you just want to get paid a little bit more for doing that work. And so there's a couple different tiers in there. But I would also then say, I would still kind of hold to my guns a little bit more, because, hey, if you want to train athletes, train adults, like, that's 2 different services. That's 2 different sales systems. That's different marketing messages. Like, so yeah, focus on just the adults, figure out what makes the most sense, be the very best you could be for that. And you charge appropriately, and you probably earn more money than trying to grab the youth and grab the kids, mm-hmm. and grab the high school kids too. And so I still would stick to my guns on just focus on that one thing that you do best. So
when did you know to expand?
Well, the opportunity arose, number one, of just saying, hey, this is, I think, where people go wrong too. It's like, just because there are opportunities doesn't mean you say yes, but like, I always explore it, right? And this is where I think I scratched my entrepreneur itch, of course, is like, let's get into this. I'm not saying I'm going to do it, but if I did, how would I do it? And it's like I said, I was approached with this, a buddy who's now good buddy of mine on the real estate side. Hey, I got a building for you. It'd be perfect for you guys. All right. So we explored that for 6 months. Deal fell through. He said, I'm going to get you somebody else. Don't worry about it. And he did. But it was a year, that was 19 months from the start of like, oh, we might expand, to like actually moving in, right? Mm-hmm. Over a year and a half is a really long time. And then it was like, all right, we have this small space. I know my capacity numbers and my price point. I mean, we're training athletes. All right, now is the time to expand our services, right? So everyone thinks they need to expand square footage. Now it's like I mentioned too, focus on what you do best first. But it's like, all right, we need to expand our services. Now we do need to add adults. We do need to add some morning times, which I was at that first mastermind, and they were prepping me to like, you need to do 6 a.m. adults, do 6 a.m. adults, do all that stuff. Like, oh, I'm the only guy there. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to sacrifice my energy, really focus to get up that early just for X amount, right? I don't need it right now. Now, if I needed it, it'd be a different story, right? But I'm going to focus on this, and I'll add it when the time came. And that's what we did. So we started building out the schedule a bit more, building out that new demographic, which I'll be honest, like, probably wasn't the best. We weren't the best at that, right? We're still the best at training athletes, but we weren't the best at this new service, but it did help bridge the gap. Now it gives you a little more stability. At least the adults give us more stability to finally do expand. And quite frankly, we're just waiting on the building ticket to mm-hmm. be finished. And that was a huge turning point, was that expansion.
So then how did you scale that expansion once you were in there?
We got in there. We had more space that we knew what to do with. It was insane. We were so used to being so efficient with a small space, large number of people in that small space, which I also don't think too many coaches know how to manage their space and the flow of a session to truly maximize it. That's a entirely different topic, mm-hmm. but one that needs to happen because, I don't have, so the facilities we have now are 8 to 12,000 square feet. Usually that 9 to 10 is kind of what we like to settle on. Those are big spaces. These are not just little studios, which even if you have a smaller studio, you need to know how to maximize that space. Because like I said before, if you can fit more people in there for your model, you're going to be doing better, right? So we had so much space in there. We had more than enough. And then it was like, all right, well, now we need to really focus on these other systems. Because marketing, from a referral standpoint, like, referrals are going to come, but sometimes you need to, like, how do you get it going faster, right? How do you outpace your attrition, your clients leaving you? How do you outpace that and maintain that growth level that you want to get to, especially when your fixed expenses, mm-hmm. Our rent was way higher, right? Our operating expenses were way higher. Our salaries are getting higher. Like, these are fixed. So how do we get up to this level? And that's where you have to pour on your marketing and sales for sure. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's like that was a stressful time, because that was like, I'm not a young kid anymore sitting in a garage. I'm in a 10,000 square foot building, and I got bills now, and I got a little bit of debt I need to clear.
So how are you controlling your salary at that time?
I took a pay cut in year 5, basically, right? Like, went backwards. And because I had guys come in, I had great, again, really supportive guys at the time, wanted to make sure like they could do this as a career. Because I think that's something that a lot of people, gym owners, struggle with. Like, once they can pay themselves, they got to look out for other people. And if they have their best interests in mind, they're going to be okay, because that's going to motivate them to keep growing and keep expanding. That's kind of where I'm at right now too. But back then it was like, I got to take a pay cut. I got to make sure, like, I'll get what's left over, and I'm okay doing that. And it was crazy too at the time, because all my fears originally about, oh, how can I get engaged? Can I get married? All that. I actually got engaged that year. So it's like, I took a pay cut, got engaged, and then we got married 4 or 5 months later. So it's like, you're paying for a wedding and all this stuff, but it all works out, because it's just push pedal to the floor. We're not stopping.
Well, that's where I think we're finding all these different places where other gym owners fail. Is they'll get to a point to where they're paying themselves and then paying themselves more and more and more, instead of reinvesting back into, the gym. They don't want to do that. They're trying to wait for the revenue to go up more to be able to bring somebody else in, to be able to push the revenue even higher.
That's a good point too, because like I said, I had an early mentor of mine. She was my accountant for 10 years, but also a good mentor for mine. Then you're joining these business mastermind groups and all that, and it's just so, like, I learned early on of like, you didn't really, you hit this amount of revenue, you didn't really, but you're not taking that home. You got to think of the full board. And I think that's where gaining the skill of gaining capacity on the metrics of your business, the data of your business, your profit and loss statement, knowing, like, having a base level of accounting, and even then some, but knowing how all this works. I had all that, thankfully. So my expectations could be a little bit different. Then you go into these masterminds and they're throwing numbers around, and I'm like, that's not true. Or it's like, you really can't afford that. Just because you have it doesn't mean you spend it that way. What about X, Y, and Z? I looked around, rather than saying I earned this much. I said, all right, well, is there an education I need to do? Is there anyone else I need to give a raise to? Is there somebody else I need to hire? Is there another service I need to do? Do I need to upgrade any of my equipment? And then it's like, all right, then what's left over? And you just get a habit of doing that. That's why we're in the position we're also in on a financial front, because we didn't just spend in excess because we think we have it. That's where our mind, we need to discipline our mind, of financial mind, of saying, this isn't all yours. Operating a business, you're playing the long game. You can't get that short-term dopamine hit. I'm just going to go buy and spend. So you got to discipline yourself in the financial realm.
So going back to the technician role, because this is in the top 3 mistakes that I see gym owners make, is you kind of put yourself into that entrepreneur role, and then you have other people doing the training. And then over a period of time, they'll see that training quality or style or philosophy that you ingrained in there slips. So then the response is, I need to get rid of that person. And then they go from that entrepreneur back to the technician. And this bounces back and forth for decades for some people. And they can't scale because of that. So once that training philosophy was developed for your 3 avatars, which the athletes and almost athletes and Gen Pop, right? How did you maintain the integrity, with ebbs and flows? Because that's normal. But I'll let you talk about that a little bit, because there is going to be ebbs and flows with that, which sometimes I think people jump in too soon, because it's one standard deviation away from where it should be, where it's not worth that jump. It's worth fixing the issue. So
a couple different points before we start too, and this is why I think the idea, and this is what's really common when you look out there, hey, especially in gym owners, like, hey, like, get the business to run without you. And I'm like, all right, when? Like, and what are you okay with slipping? Like you said, for me, I like that in theory, because what that means is like, hey, this system has, this business has legs. This business has some system, this automation to it. It's got some, this is the system no matter what. But how do you train? How do you develop that quality control? Even if it's on paper, even if it's their job, you as the owner eyes, right? Like just like a coach, like we have a coaching eye, like I have owner eyes, like I see stuff, right? That. And Some people, and I've seen this, like some people are okay with scaling and having the quality drop if it means a little bit more. For me, these are how we have a business structure now. These are local. These are all within 30 minutes of each other in my hometown, right? I cannot drop quality. We cannot scale mediocrity is what we call it. If you want to be the best, then it has to look like this all the time. So for me, that's number one. But then it goes back to the training system. Like I said, the training system looks a lot different when we're in a garage under one roof, right? Then it has to adapt a little bit when you have two facilities, right? Where I can't, like, if you're not there, definitely even more so with 3 and 4, right? And I'll also then back up too and say, you mentioned our demographic. We do some younger stuff here and there, but primarily it's 5th through 8th grade in our youth program. High school, 9th to 12th graders, right? But then we have a college program that's a little more seasonal. We've worked with some professionals in the past. We don't really do that anymore. And then it's our adult training program, which is this is all done in small groups too, by the way. But our adult training, typically 40 to 65 years old, right? And so those have the youth, the high school, different training systems, right? College, adult, kind of different training system, same theme, right? But those are different, right? And I guess especially how we administer those systems. Okay, so then it was just like we had to get the model down as well. It's one of the best things that happened, like during COVID. This is a pivotal part for us. COVID gave us the pause to kind of make some changes that we wanted to make. All right, if we're going to continue to grow and scale this thing, how can we systematize this better? How do we kind of stay at a premium service? How can we price it accordingly? But truly, how do we keep getting results at scale? And then here's the thing too. Well, who's coaching them? Because we had your top guys, and in this industry, you're always having turnover. You need to replace. So it's like we got to make this resistant to staff turnover, resistant to the best we can, right? And so that's where the system comes in to actually administering this and the checks and balances, the quality control. And now it's to the point of like, well, all right, now whose job is this? It's not necessarily mine. I have a director of training who's in charge of quality control. Every general manager has a quality control. We have coordinators, like that's their job. This is how we run a session, no matter what. This is what happens on the customer service side of things. We've been able to scale that now. We tested it, staff coming in and out. All right, what's the quality drop? Or at least we know, hey, we have a new guy coming in. We got to focus on this for a few weeks and go from there. So
now you scaled during COVID.
Yes.
So how did you do that when the gyms were shut?
So this goes back to the model too. And again, I mentioned we train athletes and adults, which athletes and adults are not just two separate demographics, because the youth is separate than high school. They're athletes, right? But then it's like, and I started off with just football players. Well, my marketing and my service has to be a little bit different for, football compared to volleyball, or even baseball a little bit, lacrosse, soccer, right? So within the athlete demographics, this is what I mentioned earlier, like if you just want to train athletes, you have to do some work on your messaging, on your marketing, and even on the service level too, because we know what they need, right? But that's not always what's going to be flashy and catch the eye of really the parent who's the decision maker, right? So we have multiple businesses within our athlete program, and then we have another business basically, which is our adult program. Now I'm saying that I'm segmenting this, but it's all one, it's all under our roof, but we treat them like they're separate, which is just a huge undertaking. That's why it's such a huge operation. So when we go open a new location, it's not just like opening one, like I said, like it's like studio. It's like you're opening multiple businesses under that roof. You better be ready to go to service all that. And we figured out a way to kind of systematize that and scale that. But it's like in order to do that, I think the best way is to, I guess, figure out the role clarity on who's responsible for what, and then be able to reinforce that over and over again.
Do you break those out as different revenue streams on your P&L?
Yeah.
All right. Because I can relate to that, right? Because we have categories. And so every category is going to have to be marketed slightly different. Bands need to be marketed differently than strength equipment. Yeah. And they're different line items. Yes. So it's by breaking those out as different line items, it allows you a better bird's eye view to be able to see what's going on with each one of those as well.
100%. And that's where we talk about data dictates decisions, right? Economics over emotions, which looks to be podcasts into themselves. But that comes from knowing your numbers, right? And I'll review guys' P&Ls when they're, their gyms, and I say, hey, how do we, where's this revenue come from? It just says revenue, and then their expenses are broken out. But hey, guys, break out your profit and loss statements to make sure they're categorized the right way, because you don't know if this, like, especially if they have multiple streams like we do, like, hey, is your youth down? Is your high school down? How's your adults doing? What's the trends? Our revenue's up, but it's like, yeah, but this program's been down the last 3 months. What's going on with that? Because it's like, how do we segment our system, segment our thinking, segment our strategy to be able to control all these at once to make sure we're driving the right direction. If you get them all going and they're all trending in the right direction, that's how you have massive growth and you can scale a little bit faster.
Well, I cracked up when you said the mentoring with the P&L. How many people do you mentor that even have a clue what the P&L statement is?
That's the first stage. So it's like, this is how you tell which stage of business they're in. If they're not tracking their data. And I was this, again, I told you, thankfully, my accountant or my mentor, I was about 4 or 5 months in, and she's like, how are you tracking all this? I'm like, this is how I'm tracking it. Thank goodness. Yeah. Thank goodness you're here. So then it's just like, you guys have this is where I call it building your professional dream team, right? And starts with the bookkeeper, right? And then you have your accountant, then you have your legal team. And when it's like a legal team, that sounds important. It's like, you at least need to have somebody you can call if there's a problem, because there's definitely going to be one. And if you have that in place, you're going to be stressed out enough when it happens. You're not going to be thinking clearly. You at least need to have someone to call. So do the work now and have that in place. So when that does happen, it's like, you have a bookkeeper and an accountant and this, like, yeah, I'm going to overinvest in this before I need it. And I always did this. We're always paying more off the front, because I know one day we're going to get big enough to where we need it. And so now, like, we've already been paying that. That's been stabilized as an expense item for the most part. It goes up a little, it goes up some, but I was planning to get big. I was planning to grow bigger. So I wanted that. I didn't want to be surprised later on, right? But I also wanted.
How many of those are just contractors?
They're all okay. They're all contract. Now, like, I have a business coordinator. She she keeps all the back end stuff. She communicates, with some of that stuff, and helps with that. Because again, we have 30 employees and a bigger company now, so she does that. And all
I want to put that out there, because I don't want people thinking, oh my God, I can't afford a full time.
No, it is. It's all contracted. It's all, but you treat them like they're part of your team. Like, you keep those relationships tight. You do what you can to nurture them, and you just draw from their expertise and experience. And that was a turning point for me. It's like, I knew I needed to delegate to that. I knew I needed to hand it off to that, but I wanted to understand why, right? Even now I have a personal CFO who helps me not only in the business, but also on the personal side of investments and insurance. And like, he handles all of that, which has been invaluable. And so being able to have this professional team, but I want to understand why and learn the nuances to it, just to grow my own knowledge base. Of
course, it protects your own ass too, because there's, at any given time, any one of them can fuck you, as you've seen through.
And there's checks and balances galore. And I break this down too, even the relationship piece of this, your dream team, like, this expands, and we can go on and on about this, but it's like, even with you guys, with Matt and Elite, it's like, we're building these facilities out. I have more facility items, which that's something on the landlord real estate side and property management side too, but also the day-to-day of that upkeep. But now it's like, I need equipment, and I need to upgrade equipment really constantly, more than I actually thought that I was going to, right? We buy it, then we're on to the next thing. But that's why you always got to tie, here's our budget, truly have a budget. How many people actually have a budget, right? Or actually how many zero project their revenue. I shouldn't say zero. Not many project their revenue until they're told to do so. They're like, what do you mean? Like, literally, like, it's kind of like a budget, right? Look at if you're tracking month over month, line by line, you should be able to look at month by month. And I still do this for all of our locations. And I'll continue to do so. Number one, I kind of enjoy it, but number two, nothing gets you the pulse on your business like looking at the numbers, right? I make decisions all day long, and like I said, the data dictates decisions. I gotta know my data. It has to be accurate. What are the economics, right? Because we get so emotional, right? No matter what. But what are the economics telling me? And that's where it's good to talk to these professional people too, as well. It's like, is this standard? Is this normal? Like, what do you see? What should I be aware of? What could really screw me over? How could I fail? But more importantly, how can I succeed? Right? What can I expect out of this? I think that's really important too. But also going back to Matt and the equipment, it's like I'm a phone call. There's a phone call away, and that's what's so important. It's like that relationship has been nurtured to where it's like, I don't have to stress out about that. Before it's like, oh, this piece broke or something happened, we got to replace this. It's like, oh man, I got to call a person. They might call me back. They're going to have a mistake. They're not going to quote it the right way. I can hardly get the guy on the phone. When I do, I have to repeat myself 7 times. Like there's all of these problems that go in. It's like, then it's like, oh, I call man. All right. Hey, I got this issue. Let's go, or, hey, I'm building a new facility. I need this stuff, like last time. Oh yeah, let's tweak this. Let's do this. By the way, you got anything new for me? All right, great. And it turns into be more fun, and we don't have enough fun as business owners. So, but because we're wearing so many different hats, it's like you can still kind of understand the hat, but I'd rather have somebody else wear the hat and then make it fun and enjoyable experience.
Well, there's also the balance of being paranoid and, trying to build.
Yeah.
Right. So you need both. I don't want to ever tell anybody that you shouldn't be paranoid or have fear, because it will fucking get you.
One of my mentors too, he said he turned, like, he called it productive paranoia. And that's kind of how I teach our staff to do it now too. Is, hey, pre-mortem thinking, right? Hey, how could this suffer? Right. And I did a presentation on this a while back too, where it's like, hey, you wake up one day, the next day you see this gravestone has your business on it. Power Strength Training Systems, 2011 to 2024. It's like, all right, my business is dead. What killed it? And it's really just like, well, that's just the same as a SWOT analysis. What are the threats? It's like, exactly. But now it's much more specific to like, what could kill it? And it's like, don't get emotional about it. Like, look at the facts, look at the data. And then it's just like, yeah, you know what? Maybe that guy in that role probably isn't the best, or that guy, I don't really trust him, or whatever it is. Or, hey, you know what? Our revenue's down and we can trend like this. We can't spend like this. Our spending got a little crazy. We're losing the pulse on this. It's like, yeah, could that kill me, or could that just be a pebble in my shoe? It's like, well, I want to kick the pebble out of my shoe where I'm running to, but like, I also want to avoid the big, like I said, the big mistakes as well.
I think more people are up to a SWOT analysis now after 2020. Right. Because the whole threat category, which is normally not looked at.
And going back to like what you said earlier, how we expanded during that time, during COVID, right? Which now it goes back to like, well, a threat could be a pandemic, which, let's be like, are we going to have another one? I don't know. We lived through it. We know there's light at the end of the tunnel. We survived it. Do we want to go through it? No, but I am 10 times the business owner I was before then. Right. And our business is in a much different direction. So we were trending at a good pace going into that. 2020 was supposed to be a huge year for us. We actually, revenue wise, earned more in 2020 than we did in 2019, but even being shut down for multiple months. But this is where it's like, this is where the value of adult and athlete pays off, right? Because we turned over, I think, 50 to 60% of our adult clients, but kids weren't doing anything. Our athlete program exploded. So we could have that checks and balances. If one's down, the other one is doing well. That, I think, is a really great model to have. Way easier said than done. People say, I want to do both. It's like, wait a second. You got to know what that entails to do so. But if you can nail it right, which we've done and scaled, we could probably be okay with that. But yeah, we expanded we made changes during COVID, good ones about our model, about the direction we want to go, how we're going to service it. And then I was trying to expand to this area for already. I looked at a building, and the year before, May of 2019, I looked at a building and I said, this is too much renovation. There's no way we can do this, but I like the area. I like the parking lot, standalone building. Great, cool. But we can't do that. We're not ready for that yet. So then, long story short, back there literally a year later, and I'm like, all right, this is the place we're going to do this. Let's do this. So it all came to fruition a little bit, but we remodeled the building and expanded during COVID. Halfway June of 2020, we reopened, and I say that in quotes because we were living in Michigan, and technically, can we open? Can we not? It's like, we're just gonna. Well, let's time to do it. We did it quietly, had a good summer, and then 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in my brother's backyard. Again, my twin brother's backyard, who lived 5 minutes away from this location. He was teaching, physical education teacher at juvenile detention at the time. Kind of dragging, kind of a good setup, but kind of dragging. But I'm like, you know what? Like, if you ever want to join the business, like, this is the time. I'm open to gym. I'm open to something 5 minutes from you. And by the way, like, after COVID happens, like, they could probably cut your position. Do you realize that? Or take a huge downgrade. And which, imagine thinking about that. Like, we were just closed for months. We're in a pandemic. We're sitting outside talking about this. I'm like, yeah, quit your job. He has young kids and sole provider for his family. Like, and thankfully he did it. And and now he managed that location that we opened. 2 months after we opened that, and he was working for us. They did cut his job. So things like that come like, always happen for a reason too. But then, yeah, government gave us money, right? So we were able to put that to good use and extend that dollar to really open another location where most people were either going out of business or playing it really close to the vest and being more fearful. I sat our people down because everyone sat down. We thought we were going to be closed for 2 weeks, right? And I'm like, there's going to be a cleansing. Like if people aren't managing their finances, if they're not doing well by their people, if they don't have their relationships in place, if they're just treating people like a number, then they're going to be out of business or struggle. I'm like, we're okay. We're set. We're ready to go. The business is healthy. We've been preparing for this because I am paranoid, right? So it's like, we'll see the light of the tunnel. Let's make it happen. So we chose to plow ahead and have that more of that abundance mindset rather than the scarcity mindset during that. And it paid off.
Why the decision to open a second location instead of just expanding the first?
Good question. I should actually clarify it. During COVID was our third.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
The second one, we moved in there February 2016. I heard my first, I had hourly staff members, and by a year later, I had multiple people on salary. We were able to promote them. I had a manager coming in to help me with that. And I got a little bored a little bit.
Bored or complacent?
Bored. Complacent, never, right? But it was like that, not complacent, because like we can do more. I'm capable of more. What's next? Like I said, then I got married, during that time too, and things are kind of settling in. We still weren't where we wanted to be, and it just happened through networking. And a guy had a spot. He had some different people training out of that facility. I met him, kind of hit it off. He's a chiropractor. Met him, hit it off. A couple months went by, and I'm like, you know what, like. Again, being in mentorship, being in masterminds, hearing about expansion stuff and all that, I just called him up. I said, hey, like, let's meet and talk about your vision for that space, because he had a gym connected to his office, and it wasn't going well. And basically, I'm like, well, I'm going to move down here. I'm going to move right next door to you. Like, would you rather just have us with you? And he made it happen.
This more of an acquisition?
No, he had the space. He was a landlord,
okay.
And we took over that space, and we're still there. And so that happened 15 months after we expanded the first time. So this is June of 17 that we opened. But again, I go back to some of the lessons. Like that was a crazy that was probably the most quick decision I've ever made. So let's do this and we'll figure it out. And we did that, but I had a stable of people. I hired 4 people in 1 week just because we had good internship program. We had loyal people in our program that were mostly ex-athletes of ours, which that's a huge benefit that we have. But I hired the people, we had the team, then we went and opened it, and I learned a ton.
What systems broke when you did that?
Communication. Internal team communication. The quality actually was really high. We had we didn't have any issues with that because they were trained, like they were good. We knew they had the training in place, but I was basically managing 2 facilities from afar. Like I created some learned helplessness, which that's one of my favorite terms because I still struggle with that today of just doing it myself. Right. But we had communications, breakdown. And now we just use Slack. Like, I don't know how we operated before Slack, right? And it's one of the key pieces that we do. Like, even I'll talk to gym owners now. It's like, how do you communicate with your staff? They got 4 or 5 employees or something like that. Like, oh, we just group text. I'm like, that's awful. Like, they hate you for that, by the way. Like, you need to internalize this a little bit so they can mentally check out a little bit, right? And create some of those boundaries. That's what people are after, right? So, but this is pre-Slack. Like, we figured that, like, we need something, a couple months after that. But it was one of the blessing in disguise too, because we were about a month in, and like it was crazy. And again, we masked it because we opened in summertime. Our summers was really busy. So like revenue wise, like you're okay. But it's like, this is crazy. I'm running around with my head cut off here. And five months into being married, my wife was like, what are we doing? Like, should I quit my job and like come work in the business? And I said, like, yeah, like we never even talk about, never considered, but she actually I met her at the gym. She was if I had to pick the perfect person off the shelf to fill this specific role, it would be her. A lot of guys like get people involved, family members involved, like, and it's not the right fit. Like she was it's the right fit. It's gotta be the right fit. That's why we've been able to work so well together. Same with my brother too. Like there's clear boundaries, there's clear role, the right fit for the job. And then when she came in, that's when we got, I don't want to say more professionalized, but also she took our adult program at the time and transformed it in kind of what it is in today. Mm-hmm. So
then when the third came during COVID, right? And then was the fourth and the fifth just the natural progression?
After the third,
I mean, at some point in time, you're going to saturate your own town.
After the second, our time, and Grand Rapids, West Michigan is a pretty unique area because it is spread out. It's pretty sprawling, people will drive, but there's pockets, right? There's suburbs, there's different pockets of areas and we started seeing that our first location, people were driving from all over. We're a destination, we're unique, right? What's God's limitations? And we expanded kind of the same thing to this one, because we're the only show in town. We're good. It was a unique thing. And then it's like when you open two, you tap into a little different. They're still driving to you, but then it's like life happens, and then COVID happened, and it's like there's other people open up stuff. High schools are doing different things, and it's like people want that 10 to 15 minute commute, 15 minutes pushing it, especially where we live. So it's like, all right, well, I've always wanted to, after two, I wanted to go a third to a different area. I've always wanted to go to that area. So, because it's a pocket, it worked out really well. And so that was a no brainer. But after three, I was exhausted because it was COVID, expanding during COVID, you're figuring stuff out. I had a 1-year-old at the time. Lots of stuff going on. So you're just like, oh man, I'm pretty exhausted with this. So I'm not doing another one. Right. And then again, opportunity comes. You kind of recharge. This is why I think so many entrepreneurs and business owners need to have a clear head. And when they you can't get a clear head. You're not going to walk around every day with a clear head, but you need to have certain times of the year where you have to kind of recharge, stay aligned. This is why values and having a filter is so important to help guide you through that, knowing, hey, I'm not in the right headspace to make a big decision right now. All right, well then when will you be? And when does the decision need to be made? You can figure all that out. So for me, I wasn't in the right headspace. And then 6 months after, it's like, oh, if I had to make another one, where would we go? And the driving force is always demand, right? We had demand for number two. We had a demand for number three even. And then number four is we moved up, I forget, 150 plus clients over there. We were literally bursting. The team up there was doing a tremendous job. We knew that was that's a no brainer. And this, again, I'm from the area. I knew that area left and right. I know it. So it's I'm putting it right there. We'll be just fine. I'm not too concerned with that. And now the natural progression is all right, do you do another, and where and how far away and all that stuff too. So we got some stuff in the works, like always, but it's more about you don't want to oversaturate. But again, like I said, these are 20, 30 minutes away from each other. So you tap into these different markets, but you can also piggyback off of your network. You can piggyback off of some of the economies of scale, as I say, to be able to, you're not starting from scratch. And that's what I'm saying. The network that we have is so big to where you can cast a huge net. And people could hear about you, but maybe they're not going to drive to you. But now you put one in their backyard. They've heard about you for years, and now.
Are you doing the demographic research on the area as well?
No, and I don't recommend doing that. But again, I'm an asterisk. Power Strength is more of a unicorn, especially with this setup. So I want people to understand that. I don't recommend that. I would definitely do that if I didn't have a good pulse on the area right already. Also, some of it, I've always had this mindset too. Is again, we've always been a little bit more of a destination. I think people get egotistical with that a little bit. But we have, but also I'm involved more on the real estate side of things, where it's this is where the building is, this is where the property is, this is what's available. Then we're gonna put it here. Is it ideal? Good enough? Let's make it work. So that's a big factor too, because we need bigger spaces, and I'm a grumpy old guy now with how our neighbors and all this stuff too. I want a single standalone spot. We need plenty of parking, all that kind of stuff. So I'm very particular about that. That dictates a lot for us too.
So do you own the buildings?
Yes and no. I have pieces, and we have some pieces of them.
All right.
Too.
So I assume the real estate is a separate entity?
Yes.
Okay. So the gyms are paying the real estate.
Yeah. And that really started around the COVID time. And again, mentors and good, even our clients are a wealth of information. I've had some good people just learn some stuff over the years too, but I keep people in my circle as well that kind of help guide that. And without them, I wouldn't dabble in this at all. But it happened during COVID. I had somebody tell them that was controlling me, so I was I got to have the control. I never want to be under a landlord's thumb ever again. Not like we didn't have any bad situations happen, but I heard of the horror stories, right?
Yeah.
I need to have that control, because why? What could kill my business? What could cause me what problems I don't want to deal with. Right?
Well, it also creates kind of the ultimate backup plan.
Totally, which is totally different. That is how many gym owners, retire at 65 with one location, right? How many are hoofing it in this gym, training or managing one location? it's a real problem in our industry, and it's becoming way more popularized now too, of what to do. Like, have your gym produce this, I want to say excess, but produce the capital to invest and have a backup plan, but also keep it to where, like, if I have some of this stuff that's as a security blanket, not only does it make me a better operator and control the business, makes the business healthy, it makes me a little bit healthy, right? Because I'm not so fearful about what happens, what if. So now I can invest and pour back into my staff, which is my total focal point right now. Why? Because what could kill me? Well, my leaders are very valuable. I've invested a lot in them. I want them to be just as happy. I know their fears and pain points as well. If I can check that box on them, great. And so how do I make this all work together? That's what we're trying to do right now. So rising tide lifts all ships. That's exactly how I hitch my wagon to that.
So if we spin this all the way back, I'm going to assume you did not have a business plan when you started. So when you're working with or mentoring people, do you suggest that they have a business plan?
I had a loose business plan. Again, like I said, I wasn't starting from, don't get me wrong, I was a total meathead for sure. I put some stuff on paper just to identify, like, hey, this is what we're going to do. But it was very simple. I care more about, like, business plan for sure, but it's like, who's your market, right? Who is the demographic? What's your actual service, right? Because I want to know what's your price point. I want to know who's your competition. What pain points are you going to have? All right, now it's like, well, our business model is, we're large group adults, right? We're boot camp. All right, well, how many people? All right, what kind of size of space do you need? What are you going to charge, right? And it's like, that's I know exactly where you're going to top out at, right? Just like an investor would look at this stuff, right? So having that plan in place, I think that's super important.
And then when did you suggest people should infuse their core values? And then how to go about discovering them?
That's a really great question. I'm trying to think exactly what we did, because it's not day one. Like, I think everybody, like, from a individual standpoint, you should, if in a perfect scenario, and I would tell 24-year-old Mark this as well. Like, and I had this already. Again, I had strong family values. I had a good upbringing. I'm very blessed to have that. I had good mentors. I like to, I had my 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. I like to listen more than when I spoke. Beginner's mind, all that kind of stuff. So it's like, you better have your personal values lined up first, right? You better have, like, because business, especially when you're opening a business, or especially if you're going to start to be a leader, right? You're going to get knocked off, right? You gotta have those guardrails to put you back, that compass, that North Star, whatever you want to call it, to get you back on point, just to not sacrifice that integrity. To me, my integrity is a big core value. So I knew I was like, hey, this could test these core values. This is what they're going to be like on a day-to-day basis. This is how they could get tested. This is where I could fall off. Individual, I better have this stuff done, right? And it's the same thing for your business as well, especially when you start having opportunities and growth, right? But also, it's when you face that adversity, you face those curveballs, right? How do we weave these decisions through our core values? How do our core values support really just reinforce what we're about? And then, quite frankly, too, we hire off our core values. The core values create the standards of our day-to-day operation, right? They create this is okay, this is not okay, this is a violation of the value, very clear, right? The standard, we always say, like, the standards are high, but the expectations are high, but the expectations are clear, right? So that's how we've been able to keep a really high standard with that. But it starts with the core values, and for us, it really kicked in about 3 or 4 years in, because you got to go operate. You got to see that. So individually, I think I had mine in place, but as a business, it was like, we sat down with key people, and we had some of our we talk about all this day. Our most fiery conversations were around those core values of what we want to be about. Which, by the way, if you have team members that are talking with you on this and they're getting hyped up, those guys care, right? And those guys are in it. And I still have a lot of them with me to this day. And they take it really seriously, because they want to know what they're about. They take themselves seriously. They want to know their company's aligned with that as well. So we have to keep pushing the pace and actually do what we're going to do, and live how we say we're going to live. And I think that's where, again, that's what I want. But I like having a little bit of that experience to test it as a real example. That's why I'm like, day one, you can say whatever you want, put them on the wall, doesn't matter, right? Yeah. But it's one of those things, like, go have some experience and, like, let's live them, and let's figure that out. Because I think your clients adopt that too. If you're vocal about them, and they should be able to tell, because, hey, one of our core values is live a good place to kill his lifestyle. So why do people? So we can use that with our clients. So we can use that word complacency. We have it hanging in banners. We like, well, why are you expanding again? Well, because we have a good message. We have a good product. Like we need to help impact more people positively. Like it's we demand more of us. We expect more of us. Like we're not getting complacent. We're going to keep doing this. We're going to do it the right way. Right. But that's our value. Right. Another one's be a pro. We got to have professionalism. We got to have reliability. You gotta operate with integrity, and then have a servant's heart, right? So we're doing that for each other, but also for our members. We're in this game to serve others, right? And it's pretty simple, right? We can weave a lot of those. We break those out quite a bit, but memorable is portable. So we wanted to have those very be short and concise, and those will work best for us.
With to pivot off into the market, or to pivot back to the marketing, how do you navigate the digital marketing today versus tagging people on Facebook?
That's really funny too, because like it went from tagging people on Facebook, right, or just making some organic posts, which we still do. We're huge on we're huge on organic stuff. We've always been it's always just been like, I just want to talk about our people, right? So it's fun to do that, even if the reach isn't where it needs to be, right? Relationships, right? So teaming up your professional team. I use a digital agency, Gym Member Machine. My good buddy started it, runs it. GR Hoff, met him through masterminds, right? Again, this web of influence and impact and networking with these people. Like you find the right people that align with your values. And again, I enjoy them too. So, now it's just an outsource. Like they help us with that. I learned it. I learned enough, and I did my own stuff. I did my own ads. I wanted to know, but do I enjoy doing it? Heck no, I didn't enjoy doing it. And how was I good at it? No, like stuff changes all the time. Like I need someone I could rely on, that I trusted, to handle that. I've been with them for about 5 or 6 years. They've seen us, they've helped us grow, scale, well, quite frankly, systematize, right? They help me, and they give me the data that I need, or help align with the data, creating a reliable resource for us. It's invaluable. If somebody wants to go dabble, like if you have one location, if you have one staff member, you're just getting started, you don't necessarily need that right away, right? But it is one of those first investments you probably should make, because you have to expect to grow. Even when you do, you can't be playing from behind. So I said I didn't answer the phone for 3 years. I didn't track a lead for 4, right? Like think about that. Like, oh yeah, I forgot that person. Oh, I met with that person and they didn't sign up, so they must not be serious. So I'm on to the next person, right? That was the mindset I had. And I could do that when I didn't need a lot of people, right? And then when you grow and expand, you got more mouths to feed. But also, we made the switch of, like when our small original facility, it was like, if you're serious, you come here. If you're not, don't come. There's a clear line. Then when we expand, it's like, guys, like and I remember talking to our team about this, like we can still have that mindset sometimes, but we need to, if our mission is to impact more people and help more people, we got to be able to pull some people over that fence. And if they're on the fence, that's our client. And if we need to pull them over too much, then maybe it's not a good fit right now, but we got to we got to have our service implemented to where we can serve these people the right way. And so now it's like I mentioned, even on the athlete side, it's like, yeah, we got a lot of kids going to college, like 56 kids, I think, signed to play. That's 56 seniors, which by the way, will all graduate and not be a client of yours anymore. Right? So,
that's
we had to reload with that, but it's like, those are all different sports, right? And that's a very small percentage of the kids that we actually train. So it's like, but so awesome is like some of those kids we pull over the fence would never have that opportunity. But we also have plenty of kids that just want to come to the gym, learn health, learn fitness, earn a little more playing time, not get injured, whatever it is. Like we got to be able to service them too. So it can't just be all, it can't be all the meathead. Hey, I'm, squatting 500 pounds, doing all this stuff. We show that a little bit. And if you look really early, that's all you'll see, because that's who our client was. But now it's like, show the kid that's getting a little better, show the kid that's helping that out. So we've been able to have those different messages and those different marketing tactics, right? Through, again, not only the agency that's helping us, but also we had to build our system out for that as well. But yeah, it's that's through the professional relationship, doing the different stuff, again, with Gym Member Machine and all that. And that's been really cool. And that's who I also do some of the business coaching and consulting with as well, for a high level group with that. Just started that this past year, was going really well too.
Well, you bring up a point that a lot of facility owners that want to train athletes also overlook, and that's the attrition of the athlete. Yeah. Where it's just like a college football team. Yeah. Like, what's the feeder system? Yep. What's the recruiting system? Yep. Because if they graduate, they may be done, or maybe they do become lifestyle clients, or they go on to college, they're no longer a client.
Yep. You need to try to outpace that attrition It's like you don't know, and you don't understand marketing, or you don't have a marketing system in place. It's like you're not going to do very well. And that's why
that attrition is going to be different than the gen pop.
Yes. Oh, it happens multiple times. It happens multiple times per year. They don't think about that. They think graduation. It's like most of our kids, they stop training for the season. So we have to educate them on in-season training, which we can do all that. At the end of the day, they're paying a lower rate. Like, you're from a business standpoint, like, they're not in the same membership, right? And that's what I mentioned earlier, like, oh, football season hit and I know nobody to train. All right, well, we need to now diversify in different sports and maybe some different ages. But so now you need different sports. Now different sports, you need to have that coach, that trainer needs to have we call it training at the spectrum. They got to have the spectrum, not only from fifth grader to a 55-year-old in our system. Sometimes we have some different programs, categories, and roles now we've developed where it's like they can really focus in on who they work with the most. But you got to train, like, you're not going to talk to that 17-year-old football player who's going to play college. You're going to talk the same way to the 13-year-old whose first day is in the gym, who has never trained before in their life, right? And then you're going to flip around and talk to the 15-year-old volleyball girl or the soccer girl, or whatever it is. Like, you got to have that spectrum and that ability, which you better have an education system in-house to be able to talk about communication and different personalities, right? And this is where I nerd out because my dad's a psychologist, right? So this has been ingrained in me forever. But really, it's just like, make it comfortable, make it fun, make them want to come back. And you have to find that person, that trainer, to be able to do that. So not only are these athletes leaving throughout the year, if you have staff turnover and they're really connected with these athletes, that relationship potentially is gone too. So how do you scale that? How do you systematize that business to where, yeah, that could be a threat, but also they're working with a lot of different coaches, and you have all great staff, not just this one person who's leading the pack and everyone else is mediocre, right? We've been able to kind of do that too. That definitely, don't get me wrong, like, people that have been training 10 years is way different than someone's been training 2, right? But we're aware of that. So how do we help our business with that? And that's a problem with training. People think training athletes is fun. I got in the business training athletes. It is fun. But the business side of athletes, you better figure this out fast, or you can still do it. A lot of people do it. They just don't make much money doing it. And then they just they talk about the problems I'm talking about. They turn the staff over. It's not a long thing. It's not a long-term thing, or they get burned out. They don't enjoy it anymore. They're working from 3 to 8 or 3 to 9 o'clock every night. Try doing that when you have a kid or family, right? Like, good luck. It works for a little while, but then it doesn't when you want to, like, then you're immediately on a clock. I tell our staff this too. It's like, all right, you guys, you're having a kid? Great. Well, you have about 5 years before you need to be available at 5 o'clock. For a few nights a week, because you're going to have to go to practice. You're going to want to go to games. Like, so what are you going to do in these 5 years to develop the skills you need to be able to do that? Not leave the industry. If you want to stay here, there's roles for you, but there's a skill gap that you need to do, and you're on the clock now to learn that. Now we can help you with that, but you got to be willing to do it. And it's the old quote of, like, it's not what you're capable of doing, it's what you're willing to do. And I think that's what's a good point for not only gym owners, but also trainers to do. Like, what are you willing to do? I know you could do it. A lot of smart people out there, information abound, but, like, are you willing to do that? And so I think that's a big thing. And a little tangent over about training athletes and turnover, but you're right. The attrition is it happens a lot. So you definitely need the marketing systems in place to be able to retain them. Well, not only just retain, here's the thing too, we didn't talk about, you just have to do a good job. Like, forget about graduating or season. Like, if they're just not having bad experience, like, they're going to leave anyways. So just like with any other client would. So I think that's something that we have to constantly have our thumb on, and we do. And it's constant. It is, we talk about success is boring, like a reload of an athlete season, reload, retain, new kids starting. It's a revolving door in the best way possible. That's just the business, right? And I think sometimes gym owners get burned out from that. I know I was at one point in time. It's like, oh, this again, like, but it's like, that's the game. What'd you sign up for? Like, that's the game you're signing up for. Like, if there's a better solution, I don't know, but you see places, again, scaling, franchising these places, and I'm like, that's tough to do as a single program, single athlete program, single demographic, because you can't pay people a lot to do that. You can promise them a percentage, you can promise this stuff. They're only going to be able to have 1 or 2 employees doing that. They're going to be a large group type model, and good luck, but because more and more athletes and more parents want premium. They want that focus. They want that stuff, because high schools are getting better, especially where we're at. We're a little bit behind, I think, in the times, but they're getting better and better. There's some good facilities. There's great equipment, and there's people running it is always the thing, but the resources are there. And it's a large group setting. So good luck, if you're going to compete with a large group setting.
So how do you retain your trainers then? because those opportunities are coming to where a lot of high schools now are using like Ohio Health or some shit like that. So now the job security is a little different than it was before, because they're actually not being paid by the high school. They're being paid by whatever insurance providers.
I think it's good. I think it's great for our industry to do that. For us personally, we've had it, like we've had that too. It's just when they get started with us, like, what do you want to do? And it's a constant. This goes back to just now management and leading them and developing them and guiding them. Like, you can't fake and we've created the culture where it's like, you can't fake it. You either want to do this for the right reasons, or it's going to be very obvious you don't, and you probably should explore some other opportunities. So setting, like I said, the expectations are high, standards are high, but they're very clear, and we're constantly getting better at that. We made the mistake of not being it, but because we know what's required for our job and our role, and our staff love it because they want to train they want to do all the spectrum, right? They want to train the kids, they want to be involved with the athletes, they want to be part of something bigger, part of their community. They like that schedule better even. They don't want to train 50 kids at a time, because they can't get the specific work they need in, or just that one demographic all the time. And so it's just like, to each their own. With that, we just have to figure that out ahead of time.
So you've been doing this for over a decade now. So the adversity you're dealing with in 2011 is completely different than the adversity you're dealing with now. But there's constant adversity, always, which is always there. So how have you managed your ability to deal with that? I mean, you have the outsourcing of all that kind of stuff. The legal issues just get pawned off, but they still come, right? And the first one is the first one. It's the biggest learning experience you ever have. But there's something every day.
Yes.
And when you're younger and just starting, that you look back and you realize how stupid that little thing was, because if you're doing this right, the adversity gets bigger. It doesn't get less. It just becomes bigger.
And again, it's not easier. It's different.
It's different. Your ability to tolerate it becomes different.
Yeah. And the risk is greater now too. I got more people relying on me than ever before, right? The numbers are bigger. Right. So the decision matters. So you're how to navigate that. I'm learning it. I'm still learning. Right. Of course. You still got to keep wise counsel, trusted counsel. And that's where I think, again, get out of your own way. Like, I've always had mentors, counsel. I'm going to keep having it. You got to keep learning, getting better with that, because trying to do it alone is foolish and definitely ignorant with this. Like, you got to have people in your corner to help you through those times. The decision-making matrix, Keith Cunningham, author, basically, again, what's the upside? What's the downside? Can you live with the downside? When I found that a couple years ago from one of his books, I'm like, that's the most simple filter, or whatever thing you want to call it. Like, that's the best thing ever. Like, truly think on that. And he's not a well-known author. I'll look him up. That stuff is great. But it was like, that we make decisions every day, and I think that's part of what we talk about, mistakes some trainers and gym owners are making. I know the best ones are great decision makers, great problem solvers, right? And then they have great leadership. So, well,
with those three things though, those can be they can be self-fulfilling prophecies for some. They think they're great decision makers, they think they're great leaders, but they don't have people around them to call them out on their own bullshit, which becomes another roadblock for a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners. Is most of the people that are around them are staff or employees, which are going to be very hesitant to be able to call them out on their issues.
100%. And that's, for me personally, that's the value of the mastermind as well. Being able to detach, get fresh eyes on the business, tell you where you're screwing up. And that's why you have to have that trust in that room and that vulnerability in the room. Go there to actually take the feedback and be willing to take the feedback, and be vulnerable with that. And I think that's why, like, I've been involved with groups like that. It's worked really well. Guys that are open to that flourish. Guys that aren't, you don't hear about them anymore. That's what we've been able to do with the group I'm in too, is like, yep, I'm going to be direct with you, but it's the truth. All progress starts with the truth, right? So are you willing to handle that? And then what are you willing to do? Like I said, again, willing to do to change some of this? Because you're right. It's like, I don't know what's happening. I can't keep staff. It's like, well, how good is the manager? Are you the manager? Well, yeah. Well, how good is your managerial skills? Like, what's going on? How good is your communication? And that's hard truth. I've had a tough pill to swallow with myself with that before. That's why I can recognize it when it's happened now. And I've done it with my own staff too. It's like, hard truth, man. I'm like, hey, most people, and I'm not sure if I totally agree with this all the time, but like, hey, most people aren't leaving companies, they're leaving managers, right? Do you realize that? So it's like, what could you done differently? And I'm not throwing that at, especially internally, like that's my own company as well. So I'm not throwing shade at our own managers. So like they're been developed to want that feedback, right? And they know, and they want the truth, and they can handle it because they know it's coming from a great place. But it's like, what could you done differently? Use this as a learning curve, or a teachable moment. And what is that learning curve that we have to get to? I know where you want to be, but we're not there yet. What can we take from this and do that? And I think that's where it's like staff turnover is like, people get really emotional about it. I've had people come and go a lot, right? And so some close, some not so close. You can definitely get emotional with it, but now it's like that's always going to happen. Sometimes it needs to happen. And other times, like, you screwed up, you could do something differently. Let's make sure we learn from that so it doesn't happen again. Because quite frankly, business wise, it's costly. Again, economics over emotion. Emotional, I can sit on that one all day long about, like, oh, this person and I did this for that, or they did this to me. It's like, well, at the end of the day, economic wise, we invested in this role. It wasn't fulfilled. The business, it hurts the business, or you know what? They did a great job. Their business is better off because of it. Just wasn't the right fit. All right, let's take that next step. Right. And so being able to think very clearly on that, I think, is a huge skill to be able to develop. Not only that, but also, like what you said, like, yeah, don't have a self-fulfilling prophecy with that. Get somewhere where somebody can constantly coach you up or call you on your stuff, and be able to really set you straight. And if you're open to that, you're going to be okay. You're going to have some growing pains, like we all do, but you're probably going to be okay in the long run.
How's the hiring process evolved over the last 10 years?
If you would have asked me that a year ago and you said, Mark, what do you guys do to hire? Do you think you're good at hiring? I said, absolutely, I'm good at hiring. I've been hiring for 11 years and hired X many people, and I'm great at hiring. And then I had to truly hire. And we were expanding, we had turnover, which, by the way, I always like to preface this. You're going to have turnover no matter what. If you think you're not going to, that's like one of the most egotistical things you can truly think about. But especially if you start to talk about raising standards or being the best. And we started that. And I sat with our leadership team, awesome, amazing guys, been with us a long time. They understand this too. And I said, guys, we start talking about this stuff and the qualities we want out of people and the standards of our business. Like, you're going to have turnover. Are we willing to have these problems? Short-term pain for the long-term game. And they 100% yes, right? Because they're not about being part of something that's just, just another gym, just another business, another trainer. So they're all for it. And it came, right? And it's like, hey, we're going to do this. Let's do this. Because they're not just getting turnover. We pay people well, above market. They have the best, from a fitness industry standpoint, one of the best setups you could possibly have, with compensation and benefits and even the schedule, right? They're not hoofing 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. They don't do that. They're probably working, a couple split shifts if they're just a coach, right? But it's a great setup, right? Because we checked all those boxes. But even having that great setup, you're not going to be a fit for everybody. And especially if you're going to hold people accountable. And I want to so anytime we talk hiring or even just leading a team in general, I think people don't understand that if you're going to hold people accountable, which is one of the hardest things to do, is actually like, here's our expectations and guidelines, but cool, are you actually going to follow it? That's the hard part, because that takes conflict, right? That makes great communication, that takes nurturing, values. Do they know they care about them, right? It takes all of that to do that, but you're going to have turnover, especially if you have high standards and you hold people accountable to those standards. So we had to hire, right? Now, not being naive as well, it's like, oh, we're going to open this other gym. We just need to hire, a handful of people. We good. We'll start that process, here. And we hired all year. And I think I have about 400 hours of hiring under my belt, hiring and onboarding and just strategizing about that, recruiting, all within the last year. So I learned a ton. Our hiring process is pretty in depth. Just because there's kind of a unique setup to begin with. But again, there's a lot of standards, and we don't just let anybody come in and influence our members, right? We control this environment exactly the right way that we want it to be, and who we bring in front of them is everything. Who we bring in to work amongst our staff is everything, because clients will come and go too. Clients can go faster than staff do, right? So who they work with, I think, is super important. That's why I love just team sport athletes. They've been around the locker room. They've been around teams. They know what it takes to be a good teammate, hopefully, right? So they have some of those boxes already checked. That's what works out really the best for us specifically. Not just because we train athletes, but they can be because they're part of the team. So we do, again, typical process is we funnel it all through an application process. I have a director of personnel now that helps me handle this. Because it's a lot. It's constant now. Like I used to just flip the switch. Oh, we need to hire somebody, and then hopefully I don't have to do this for 6 months or a year. But by the way, like imagine if you never practiced the skill for 6 months or a year, or you only did it once, and then you don't like expecting people that were good at hiring. It's one of the things I talk most now with the gym owners, quite truthfully, is like you haven't nurtured the skill, you haven't rehearsed the skill. So this is something you constantly need to do. And if you don't have the role for that yet, well, how can I learn how to do that? Well, start studying it before you need to know how to do it, right? So we funnel through the application process, intro phone call, then they'll sit and meet in person with our director of personnel and usually a general manager. Now it used to be me. I'm trying to remove out that first in-person step, and then they'll meet with me and my director of personnel. We'll have them observe in the gym, which is still part of the interview process, but we kind of get them more relaxed. But it's more so like, hey, do you want to be in this environment? You see how the gym is operating. Like, this is fast paced. This is what it is. Are you okay with that? Do you want to do that? Oh yeah, it's great. Cause it's a dopamine hit. Cause it's good energy. Right. And then I meet with them, and usually my director of training or another general manager, I'll sit in the gym with them personally still to this day. And we'll take them. It's part educational for them, but it's also kind of part of their test, to say like, these are the fundamental movements. This is our spectrum. This is what we expect you to do. Coach me through this, and really just put them on stage from the start to see where they're at, right? And it's twofold. Number one, let's see how they communicate. Let's see how they interact with this. Let's see how they adjust if they don't know something, right? Or are they going to be really standoffish and egotistical about it? Or are they open to learn? But also too, I talk about hiring. Hiring is kind of the easy part. Onboarding is the challenging part. And so this is why we added this step too, and definitely paying more attention to it now, because if they're in that scenario and they say we want to hire them, we know where they're starting, we know where to onboard them, or how to take their onboarding plan and customize it to where they're at and where their strengths are, but also their weaknesses and how to reinforce that. And then we'll close out, make an offer, and so on and so forth, right? Typical offer. And then we got to onboard them, which is our focus as a company right now has been hugely taken. We've been put a lot of emphasis on this lately, because it's one of the biggest wastes of money, but also one of the best investments you could possibly make with somebody. So it's a waste of money if you do it poorly, which we've done countless times, a lot of money. Just didn't pan out, wrong fit. But we knew it. We should have checks and balances in place to understand that. Like, again, don't get emotional about it. Especially for me, it's like, I hired these people. I signed off on them off potential, right? And it didn't pan out. It's like, cut your losses, go from there. Like, but how could you put different checks and balances in place? How could we own it, right? Especially trainers, gym owners, they all extreme ownership. It's like, well, now it's time to practice it, right? That was on me. We didn't onboard them the right way. We didn't have the system built out. We didn't coach our managers up to how to onboard them the right way. All the mistakes in the book, right? Well, okay, well, now how do we do this the right way? And focus on that. So the onboarding has been a big focus of ours lately.
Well, with the onboarding, there's also an offloading, right? Because a lot of people can make it through the interview, but you really don't know their actual skills until they're doing the work.
Yep.
And a lot of times you find out, they misrepresented themselves greatly.
Yep.
And maybe on your end, maybe the expectations were also misrepresented, and or miscommunicated is probably better word.
And again, yes, we made all those mistakes totally. And again, that's why we have like 5 steps now. I was just talking to the guy the other month. It's like, well, like, you met with him one time, then you hired him, like, and now you're surprised it wasn't paying off. Like, anybody can put on a face for an hour, right? Or one interview. So us expanding that out helps with that too. But you're right, you never really know until you get in there and start to do the work. So that has to be part of your process as well, and how to step that out. And there's ways to go about doing that. But you're right, like, let's have the day-to-day grind. Let's see if it wears them down, right? Let's see how they act under pressure. Let's see how they act if they have a couple bad nights of sleep or whatever else they're dealing with. Can they go on stage? And that's our That's our term for like being in front of the client. Like we're on stage. It doesn't matter if you didn't sleep, doesn't matter if you're hungry, none of that, right? You're on stage serving the client. Let's see how that does. And you're right, it doesn't happen until they're in there.
How will that change if it's back office?
It's similar, but it's the role is much more, I would say, proactive than reactive. So it's like from a coaching standpoint, I'm a trainer, I'm in there. Yeah, this is the workout. This is how I teach the workout. But like this person showed up 5 minutes late. This person has this event. This person hurt themselves here. I got to adjust on the fly. That's the learning gap from a trainer standpoint, learning how to be reactive, right, with that and flow within our system and our sessions. The back office stuff is more like, this is the job. They usually come in with more experience too. We hire for more experience with that. Like, this is the job. This is when you do this. This is the system. Run the system, right? Not nearly as much reactive. It's just more like, this is the job and do that. So it's not as much. There's a little bit, especially in our business, like there's a little bit more to that, but we found that's been a little easier to systematize, especially when we can outsource to the marketing agency and stuff like that too.
Okay. So with that back office, because it's easier to hide the lack of skills with the back office until you put them in, and they start running, with things, because you think they have more experience. They may not.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you navigate that onboarding? Because at some point in time, or in some cases, it's better just to offload and find somebody who actually does have that experience, because the skill gap is going to be too wide.
Yeah.
They're not going to be able to close. It's not like teaching a bench press.
Yeah.
They're not going to be able to close the ability to use X software or whatever it's going to be.
And I think that just comes with knowing, again, I made this mistake. So it's just like, all right, number one, do I have the role defined truly, or I just need some help, right? I just need some help. Well, for how many hours a week? Oh, at least 25. It's like, well, maybe it takes you 25 to do it, but this person's focused on nothing else. They could get this done in 10, right? So you have to define the role, right? And truly, just from a time standpoint, but also responsibility standpoint. All right, what skills are needed for this responsibility? Do I need somebody with experience or not? If I have experience, what's my budget? What can I afford to pay this job, this role? Because experience is going to be more costly, right? But if I have to teach them this stuff, what's the true cost of that? So am I willing to do that? The business is do I have somebody to do that? Am I willing to do that? Whatever that is. So I think that's the filter you kind of have to weave it through, right? And then from there, it's, are you onboarding them? All right, well, how are we going to measure success? So I think it's one of those things of like the skill of not only delegation, but clear expectations of when they should be able to do that and by when, right? But also be able to like, hey, this is what you can expect when you're coming here. This is exactly what we're going to be doing. We're going to check in on this point. By this point, you should be able to do this. If we're not, then let's pause and do this. But that's just that constant management. I think too many times, again, I've done this too. It's like, oh, you're good. You're sitting in the seat. We talked about it that one time. All right, you're good. All right. And then you never go back until there's a problem. And then all of a sudden, then you get emotional and all that stuff. But I think that's where when I say systems, I'm not talking about just like simple things. Like, this is a system too of onboarding. It's a system of communication. There's a system of development that has to happen. And so that's why we meet quarterly with everybody. But really, we meet quarterly as a leadership team. We do a midpoint quarterly now as a leadership team, and managers are meeting with their people every week, just checking in. They have different, I guess, varying degrees of check-ins, right? Or different varying degrees of intensity of those meetings. But really, it's like they're on a path, they're on a plan. The role's been identified. They know what the next step is. I think that's really important for us in our business, because we don't want anyone just sitting there. We say you want to be stuck behind a parked car, right? Like, if they're not hungry for that next step, fine, but they better know that and communicate that. Otherwise, we're going to keep pushing it. They can be the very best we can. Otherwise, we're going to expect them to keep moving forward. So they all have the developmental plan of what's next. And then just as you scale and get bigger, that's like, all right, well, who's responsible for the back office people? Who's responsible for the trainers, and so on and so forth. But I think that all comes back with the role and the setup and the structure. And if you want to talk about, like, I don't expect gym owners to have that on day one or year one, just like the profit and loss statement, like, or tracking a scorecard or anything else like that. But like having what we just stole the term from Traction, the accountability chart, right? Having that put in place to help truly identify the roles has been super powerful, especially as we've gotten bigger across multiple facilities. Because again, we still function as one. I own 100% of these. We have one leadership team. We have we would call like more like headquarter level roles. And then, so what is that interaction like with the site levels now, to be able to truly function as one and maintain quality? So, which is really nice. I found out too, it's like, it's hard to enact maybe some like big systematic changes once in a while, but if you need something done, it's like, hey, we're doing this now, done, automatically implemented, just because we don't have to go through too much red tape or other communication. All that system is built out to where I can check the checks and balances too, or someone on my team can, through not only the cadence of meetings, but also the cadence of reporting. So I get the reports, the data, whatever I need sent to me in a timely fashion to make the decisions, or the person that needs it does. And we've been able to scale from there. And like accountability stuff, that's from Traction, the book Traction, Gino Wickman, all the other good books. I like to start with Get a Grip is one that I should have read first, and then that. Funny story though too. I started reading Traction. I think this is where it's important to understand too. I started reading Traction, I think, in like 2012, which is just me and like maybe one other part-time guy. I'm like, this doesn't apply to me. I set it down. And then like 2 years later, I'm like, oh crap, I should have read this years ago, because it was more applicable then. Now I'm not saying maybe don't read it, but I'm saying like start to engross some of that ahead of time. But yeah, I think that's just really important to understand as you set these checks and balances. And
what was one of the biggest mistakes you made?
Simply just, again, whether it's people, it sounds basic, but it's just like, oh yeah, unclear expectations, or unclear expectations of doing this by this time. Or just simply saying, not having the role as clearly defined as possible, of saying, hey, you're getting paid, we're paying you to do this, so of course you need to do this. And it's just like, well, nobody ever actually told me how to do that, or taught me how to do that. So hiring poorly. Here's the thing too. And I dub this like, you got to make the correct hire rather than the convenient hire. And my biggest mistakes with people, the most part, is the convenience of it. Now, whether that's hiring or promoting somebody before they actually earned it, right? And I've done both countless times. And so when it comes to mistakes, usually it comes from that, and making the convenient hire over the correct hire, or promoting them before they've actually earned it, or before they have the skills to truly do the job. And do they actually understand the role? So then what's the backtracking look like after? Doesn't look good. It's not good. It usually, if they're doing it for the right reasons and it's a good relationship and it's like, you catch it early enough, and you can sit, and again, this is where you check, you go, hey, we screwed up. I screwed up. Like, I want the best for you. This is what it's gone for you, for your future. This is how I think, this is the change I think we need to make. Are you open to doing that? Do you understand that too? And then if there are, great. Otherwise, and if you don't address it, aren't proactive with addressing it, they either stay and slowly erode either your team or your service, or they'll eventually quit and find something else. Right. And so that's just like, sometimes some of these mistakes, you can't go back and fix them all. You got to be okay to live and learn and move on from it. And it's not, which again sounds harsh, but it's like, that's what it is. They're probably hopefully they're in a better spot too, but this is business. We got to keep moving forward and have a short memory with that, but also learn from our own mistakes with that. But it's hard to reconcile some of those. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see gym owners making now? They make the convenient hire. They just get somebody in there, because most gym owners are stressed out, burned out. They want to be, again, and I agree with this to some point. I want to be working on the business rather than in the business, right? The technician, like they want to maybe not, some of them want to offload that altogether, but their business isn't ready for it yet, or they don't have the skills to necessarily do that, or the resources to do that. So they get a little frustrated with it. So they just want to get somebody else in there, and not pay them a lot, usually, because the business can't really afford it. And then they have that, then it's like, well, I'm paying you to do the job. Why aren't you doing it? It's like, but maybe it's not enough. Maybe it's not what they need, but it's just that convenience of it where they feel like the box is checked, but ultimately it still keeps them up at night. Right. So again, I think a lot stems from those two things. You have one note here, your best referral ever? Oh, that was my Dave Tapes. That was my Dave. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. That snowballed at all, because like I said, that got me on here, and then also got me on again. Then by being here, it was like I got in touch with Rick Damon, which was great. But then you're exposed to a whole new world. Like Buddy Morris is a big influence of mine. I actually got to meet him because my partner played for them. And so that was one of the best things. I've actually met him multiple times, and spent some time with him. Like, not too many people can say that. Like, but that's all started. I only knew of who he was through the site, And so that's where it's like, even to this day, I just met with our interns last week. And it's like, do you guys know who this person is? Do you know who this person is? Like, trying to teach them to go to the source, right? And go, rather than these clips that they see or regurgitate information on the internet, right? Like, go to the source. That's all stolen from these principles, right? Which is fine, but as long as you know, like, go to learn these principles the right way, and then you can mix in this variety and do all this. But like, you guys know who these people are, so it's kind of one of those things that I kind of hold, I hold myself accountable to. It's like, these are the titans of our profession, just like all the people that you learn from too. It's like, how do you pass this down generationally to have people understand this? And that's why I think it's more important than ever before to have these good resources available to people, because we have learning at our fingertips more than ever before, of course, but it's not always the best thing because it's so superficial and not as deep as it needs to be.
So where are gym owners or online coaches, for that matter, how can they build and work their referral systems better?
Referral services. So like there's like natural referrals and there's orchestrated referrals, right? And the natural stuff's going to come just because, hey, you're taking care of people, they're doing a great job. They might tell somebody if it comes up in conversation. Orchestrated referrals are more, hey, this is when we ask for this. This is part of our system. When they do this, hey, when someone hits the goal, we should ask. Hey, when someone signs up, we should ask. And having those built in to your business, but also having the process for them to refer, make it easy for people to refer. Email connections the best typically. Hey, just connect me through email, right? Or who do you think of that could use this same quality or the same level of service or experience the results that you did? Great. Like, can you connect me through email with them? I'd love to take care of them. I'll give them, again, then you can mix in offers or whatever else you need. But I think this again, it happened. I went the organic route, just natural referral, organic referrals that are happening, and great. But it's like, that's not a strategy, right? That should happen. If you're doing it, by the way, too, if you're not getting those organic referrals, you need to focus on your service, right? Yeah. So if you're doing a great job, it's going to happen. But if you're trying to grow and grow quickly or grow, again, to outpace maybe some attrition, again, you shouldn't have to outpace your attrition if you're doing a great job too, but they should be happening regardless. But if you want to go a little faster, then you need to be able to orchestrate some of these. And it doesn't sound, people like, well, I don't want to ask. Like, it's that same fear they have with maybe sales. Like, again, I used to think sales was like a dirty word. Then I learned very quickly, like, I gotta be able to help people, so I need to learn how to do this. But referrals, orchestrated stuff is just like, they're not thinking about you 24/7. It's, again, naive to think that you are. Like, they're spending time with you, they enjoy it, but they have other lives going on. So how can you mix this into your system, make sure you ask? Because you have other stuff going on in your business too, and you might not always think about it, right? And because it takes a little bit of extra work, especially if you want to teach other people how to do this, then it needs to be part of the system. Because if you are the owner or you're the main trainer and you don't even remember to ask it sometimes, what do you think another of your staff or employees are going to do when it's, they're not the owner? So you have to make it part of the job.
So how do you teach that to them? So it's just not them saying, hey, do you know anybody that wants to train?
Yeah, it's finding those moments, those key moments, and educating them on that. And then it's just, then we have some orchestrated just plays we run throughout the year that are more systematized. Like, everyone's going to get this opportunity to do this. It's like, hey, it's bring a friend day or bring a friend week. And we create some different verbiage around that, but different plays throughout the year that, hey, this is we have this pass, you can give it to this person this pass. We do some stuff around the holidays. So there's things that you can do overarching. Then there's things that are done one-on-one. And you have to educate those one-on-one scenarios when they're going to happen. Hey, when they say this, then that's probably a good time to ask for that. Or, hey, when they sign up, ask. Hey, when they hit a goal, make sure we have that conversation, or even just drop them a hint. Or it's once they learn how to do it, it's pretty simple and effective. And also, that's where the scorecard comes in. So if referrals are important to you, then put it on your scorecard and make sure we're tracking it. Again, how many other gym owners have an accurate scorecard? I have a scorecard to begin with, let alone update it every week and track what they're supposed to track. That's a huge thing too, of just, if it's important to you, it needs to be measured. So if you want referrals to be measured, then put it on your scorecard, and then you're going to look for these opportunities to have those conversations.
How did your role change after you became a father?
Do the same amount of work in less time, pretty much. But it was just very clear of, hey, this is probably not the schedule I want. I'll do what's necessary, but long term, it's like, this is probably what I need, how I need to do this. What are those non-negotiables for me? And then what is just outside of my role? What role do I need to hire, or what role do I need to develop to be able to assist me with this, especially as the business is growing, right? Because we added 2 locations since I had my first child. So it's like, life is going to keep, business keeps going no matter what's going on with life. And so figuring that out and creating those, not only those boundaries, but rather than fighting it all the time, it's like, how do I integrate this within my life, right? It's not going where this is what I chose to do. I enjoy most of it, right? There's always things that like come with the territory. But when that stuff comes up, this is why I think developing the mindsets that we've been talking about, how to deal with these issues or adversity, how to develop great people on your staff. Like, I knew that these were going to happen. And if having a family, it's like, I don't want to be dealing with this, but if it does come up, I don't want it to totally consume me, and I want other people to help me share the stress of this, right? So what do I need to develop to be able to get that? And so I started this probably a long time beforehand, even. This is just kind of how I think. But then oh man, we're pregnant. Oh, 9 months. I better get this stuff in the works, because this is not going to be non-negotiable for me once my child comes, or my family time is going to come. And so now, again, the busier we get, more staff. We double our staff since then easily, and we have a bigger operation, but I still have probably less time during the day now, just because I have non-negotiable time frame. But also then figuring out how to integrate that, and great supportive wife too, who understands the business, but also understands my role with that. And I think that just like anybody who's a business owner or has a high stress job, or even job that they're passionate about, they need that support in the home. I think that's going to be super beneficial. So even if I'm having a rough day, great. Let's not bring it home and dwell on it. Let's figure out what tools can I use to make sure I'm dad when I'm home and not the CEO Mark,
So since you started the business in 2011 to now, how much time in each day are you not thinking about the business?
I think about the business almost all the time, minus some focused family time. Man, I'm thinking about it all the time. That's what I'm saying. And again, it's not like, I think the thoughts change though, where early on it could be more like, I don't want to say negative, but it's fear driven, or you're stressed out, or this is going to crumble. This is going to do this. And we still have those. Every business owner has that, right? Especially in the fitness industry. But now it's also like, I think, and I still have a little bit of that, but I think it's shifted more to opportunity or efficiency, or how can I make this better for our staff, our members. And so you're just thinking ideas, and I'm never going to, it's hard to shut that off. That's what from a true visionary standpoint and an idea guy and being creative with this, and building, like, I love the process. And I think that people have to understand, business owner wise, or, definitely in the gym industry, like, I love the process of building. And if you don't, then you need to that needs to be part of your end game. That needs to be part of what your strategy of doing that, because I'm going to keep building this, because I enjoy it. It's fun to me. It comes with problems, yes, but I love to spend my time thinking those through, again, how to be the best, how to improve certain things, make them more efficient. Love the systems, love the ecosystem of the business to be able to do that. So I think about it a lot, right? But it's being able to, again, discipline the mind, and hey, I'm not thinking about this now, I'm with my family, or hey, I'm taking some downtime, I can go distract myself a little bit. That's been I don't do that all the time, but when I do that, even like going to a mastermind for a couple of days, or putting more of a coaching hat on, talking business rather than being a little bit in it, because I'm still in it. I'm still helping I'm not in the day-to-day, like managing the day-to-day facility, but like I'm talking through problems, I'm coaching on that front. So I'm in it. So it's like one of those things of, you're right, where do you put your headspace with that? It's always there, but trying to, manage that a little bit better each and every year, truly.
Well, I don't think that's something that a lot of people that are aspiring to have a business wrap their head around. They
I would agree with you.
They want to have the business because they think it's going to create more freedom than being able to, clock out and just do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
Where it's a marriage, and it's 24/7, that it's always on. And people can argue against me, but I'm going to say you're going to fail.
Yeah.
Because it's always there. So, how can you make as many things mobile as you can? right? That's a big ticket, so you can do it anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And to make that realization that you're not going to go from, 20 or 30 hours or 40 hours or whatever you're working into your own thing at the 40 hours, you're going to trade 40 hours for almost 20, every hour you're awake.
Yep. And
for less money.
You're 100% right. I agree with you too, because again, I think they're comparing. It's comparison. Again, comparison is the thief of joy. We know that. That's a quote I've been saying for years, and I think that's really true. And I talk about it with our team and our interns and our athletes, and again, but also pros don't compare, right? If I'm comparing, number one, I want to inspire. I want to be the best. I want to see what people are doing. That's great. And I wasn't always like this either, but now it's like, cool. Like, is there an idea I could take? Like, what they do really well. I may not agree with everything they do, but if they're doing something well, like, great, And if they're a good person, great. Let's root for that success. I can still compete with you. Competing is different than comparing, though, right? But I think that comes from comparison of just that freedom promise, right? And I say, fine, you could have freedom, but how many moves away are you from completely changing? Or I would also ask, like, you could have freedom. I can go scale a bunch of these things. Do I care about the product? Do I care about the service? Am I actually going to invest in a slow, painful death? And maybe that's good for me financially, but that doesn't align with my value system, especially right now, right? So, there is so yeah, I'm going to be tied to it. There is going to be a marriage for it. I signed up for it. How do I put the different lens on it where I can enjoy it rather than, oh, this is the constant, I'm constantly shackled to this thing. It's like, well, is there a different skill? Is there something I could do differently to maybe enjoy this better, create a little more freedom for this? So, like, to your point too, it's like when I was training so much, you're confined to like the schedule and you enjoy it. The training's the fun part, right? You're dealing with people, interacting with them, and you have so much time to get this other stuff done, and you better get it done, right? So Parkinson's law, right? Our time will expand what we deliver it or how we deliver it. So now it's like, maybe I have more time, but I have to discipline myself even more to get this stuff done, especially now too. I'm onboarding our marketing department, right? I have an in-house stuff. We could do so much stuff locally or internally, and combining that with the agency stuff that we're doing. And I'm pretty much spearheading that too. So I'm busier than ever on the actual like project and deadline side of things. So integrating that with the big visionary idea stuff has been very interesting for me lately, which is it's been fun. It's been a lot, but I say that to say, like, I'm busier than ever before, but I still have a little more freedom. I can work from home, right? I have a whole home office set up because that's where I get my focused work done. If I go on site, I wear a different hat in the business, right? So years ago, I would never have been able to do that, right? And just like little freedom things like that. I can take my son to school 3 days a week, right? I can do those types of things that, like, freedom isn't just going to sit on a beach for 4 weeks, and be unplugged and just work from your laptop, right? It's those other day-to-day integration thing. Like you said, it's a marriage 24/7. How do I live my life, to have those little extra bonus points? And again, don't get me wrong. Like we've earned them. Like I've earned it. And my focus is still there. You're not losing focus on it. If anything, it's ramped up even more so, but there's definitely a learning how to, I don't even like the word balance because it's always uneven. It's not an equal balance, but that's why I like the word integrate, and integrate that better into your life and, create the lifestyle you want. It's like, well, right now I have 2 young kids. Like this, I don't necessarily want this lifestyle, but it's like the lifestyle I want right now is what is right in front of me. And I know that will change. So I can't wait for this to happen. I'm not letting life pass me by. This is what the business needs. This is what's required of me in my role in the business. This is my role as a husband. This is my role as a father. And this is what it is right now. All right, great. When am I reevaluating this? When am I reassessing what has to happen? When this comes, is this non-negotiable, or what's going to happen? So
now, do you have to separate yourself entirely for that reevaluation?
It helps. And that's why I maintain the travel. For me, when I go to these masterminds, I'm traveling for the most. I'm getting on a plane. And I've done that for the last 10 years, again, every quarter minimally, but usually it's 6 to 8 trips a year minimum. Or I go on a drive, right? Or I'm on a drive to, even down here, drove 5 hours, 5+ hours to get here. Like, that's awesome. It's the best time ever. Just getting that little alone time. Again, I mentioned my dad grew up on a farm. We still have that property. We still use it. For hunting and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, go down there for a day. It's a completely different world. Sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes people don't have that set up. So it's like, you need to create that space. That's something that you need to be conscious of. to actually create, because you're going to need it, especially as a business owner, especially you start having a team or a family and get pulled in a lot of different directions, wear a lot of different hats. You got to be able to do that, even if it's just for a couple hours during the week, but you have to be very conscious of that and intentional about creating that space.
Were there any topics you wanted to cover that I didn't bring up?
What else is anything else on the list?
Other streams of revenue.
We kind of touched on that with losing focus. I wrote down some thoughts too.
Not a fan of long-term goals.
Yeah. Yep. That. Yeah, I think that's, I mean, we'll keep it gym owner related, not necessarily trainers, but yeah, we can talk about the goals. I think that's so. I'm not sure how you feel about that either. You know, it's important to have a vision.
I've never liked it. Ever since I read, it was a book that John Shula wrote with Ken Blanchard, and he spoke about goals, and he said that he didn't like goals because they're shortcomings.
Yeah.
Because if you hit the goal, what if you had more left over? So ever since reading that, I don't like that word.
I know.
I've always used the word objective instead of goal. And, you know, sometimes I'll write that just because I know that's what somebody else will relate to.
Yeah.
But ever since that time, it's been like a thorn in my side where.
Well, now you got it on me too. Now you're resonating with that too. Because it's right. Like we set goals internally, right? Scorecard. We're getting very data driven, incentivized. Like people are incentivized for this goal. And it's just like, and again, I control the pulse of that too. So it's still, that's something I'm not delegating that right now. Like I control all that no matter what location it's for, what we're trying to achieve, if there's a monetary or incentive tied to it. But it's like, yeah, like we hit the goal. It's kind of anticlimactic. Even if you got incentivized for it, like you could still leave a lot of meat on the bone. There's still more to it. Like why constrict yourself to that? And I think that's important. Now, again, short term, I think it's a good way to kind of motivate, maybe inspire some people to do some things. But does it really? What objective is it a part of? Right? There's definitely a bigger piece to that.
I mean, we use metrics.
Yeah.
I mean, there's metrics you'll track, but they're only as good as the outcome they can derive. You know, so a lot of times we'll start with a lot of metrics, but then it gets trimmed down into the ones that actually matter the most.
Yep. And
that would be kind of like a scorecard type of thing. But with the long-term objectives is, you know, as a lifter, and when I was coming up, it's like, okay, I want to compete at this level. So this is going to take 4 years. And at a certain point with the business, it's like, well, what is the strategic objective? Where you want to be in 5 years? I could do that 20 years ago. I can't do that now because it's too fucking long.
Yeah.
Like you don't know what's all, it's a false reality, you know, where you kind of know where you want to go, you know, but it becomes more quarterly for me. And there's definitely annual, you know, because that's how P&Ls work.
And I think that's like and that's what I took from getting traction too, where it's like, we are like a more of a unofficial EOS company, you know, following that, and we've adapted it, kind of morphed it to what we have, but we kept the 3-year picture and the 1-year plan, right? Which the 1-year plan is what I focus on the most. Which, by the way, matching the metrics to that, you know, and those measurables to the goals, really just revenue goals. Like it is eerie how accurate we are with that and how much we're on pace with that, which I credit my team to, hey, we need to do this, right? But sometimes I can't even explain it. It's just the gut reaction. That's why it's hard for me to delegate it. Of just having such a pulse of the business of like what we're capable of. But I've been really impressed with our staff too recently, because like some of those were big. Oh man, we need to hit this, and they're kind of like they don't push back, but because they're used to that. But it's like, oh wow, like it's kind of sense like that's kind of a big deal. Like it's like, yeah, but this is what we're gonna do. Just focus on this. Let's reevaluate. So that's why we started doing like mid-quarter reviews as well, we go off site for 5 hours on a mid quarter, then we do like a day or two at the quarter, depends what's going on. But it's like we're looking at that multiple times a quarter, those short term, and all of a sudden look at the end. If you do that, then end of the year, you're good to go, right?
Or should be.
Yeah,
I mean, there's downturns too.
Yeah.
So if you're waiting a whole year and it's a downturn, and you haven't adjusted your expenses, you're fucked.
Exactly. That's why. And I just started doing that. Like even the last couple of years, it's like I used to set the projections and like look at the budget. And again, I say budget. It's not like if there's something we need, like we have enough that we want to like portray, or enough to take advantage of an opportunity, and that's just smart business. That's what's taught.
Well, let's dig into that, because that's a tricky one, because some business are going to operate on what they have in cash, others will operate in on credit line, right? The way I've always seen that is credit line is like, you don't touch that unless it's absolutely 100% necessary.
It's a great security blanket, but I'm with you. Like,
yes.
I personally don't like it. Some people are they're more risk averse. They like debt, or if they've had debt over their head for years, they're just accustomed to it. And some that haven't had debt, it's like the plague. And then it's learning how to like, hey, some debt in business at a certain time is probably what you need and is okay to have. And I need somebody else to tell me that, right?
Usually that's not on your credit line. That's different.
It's different. Yeah. And the credit line is just like, hey, this is a security blanket. Which again, I think most businesses, if you've been in business for a handful of years and have a good credit score and all this stuff, like you need to show that you're a growing business. You need to be talking and shaking the trees at your local banks and credit unions to establish those relationships. It's one of the relationships we didn't talk about as the banking relationship, which I learned the hard way through COVID, where it's like, yeah, good luck talking to Bank of America, but some local banks are going to take your call and help you out because you know them. Right?
Well, they're not going to expand your credit line when you need it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So it's like, be proactive with that. So yeah, I mean, it's on the debt side, it's just kind of what you're comfortable with though, too. It's kind of what you're comfortable with, what the business can handle. And what are you doing with that? So you can't just have it just to like to reinforce your lack of discipline, really what it is. You're delaying the inevitable. You're masking it. You're putting a Band-Aid on the root problem, right? And I think that's where being financially astute and financially disciplined, and again, having some help maybe with this too, like, hey, you're ready. Hey, you're ready for this. Hey, you should do this. Like, are you sure? What about this? Like, oh no, you guys can afford it. Or, hey, when you get to this point and then we'll add it, or whatever it is. Like, that's why you need that team for, in your corner for sure, especially if you have big goals on scaling and growth, and the numbers just get bigger, and you got to be able to make sure your business can grow with it. Hence the 1 year stuff readjusting. Hence the projections and making sure that those are in line, because that really sets the goals. I use my projections to set what's possible. It's not just some metric that I want. Hey, this sounds good, so let's do this. Like, there's a rhyme and reason for that, and I tell my team that too, of like what goes into this. So it's like, guys, it's possible based off our model, based off all this, what we need. And then we take all that and break it down to the weekly scorecard that we can check on. Are we on track, off track? So they can just focus on what really matters the most, which sounds very simple. Like, that's really hard to do. Not many people, especially gym owners, will go to that level because it's not fun. But that's why they need to get some coaching on this stuff, because this builds out the role. This builds out the actions you want done in your business outside of, like, you're going to train, but like, you're going to run sessions. But outside of that, like, how do you know if your business is really on track or not? What do you want it to do? Well, make these metrics part of the role. Make these key performance indicators part of the role, to know if it's what success looks like. Because otherwise, you're going to have, and I've done this too. Hey, you just train people. All right, what else? I want to grow. I need to earn more. Like, what else can I do? Just train people. That's all the sessions we have for right now. It's like, well, is there anything else I can do? Is there another skill I can learn? Like, and that's really this came from. This is born out of a deficit, right? Of like, hey, yeah, well, we should also be doing this. We should also do that. Well, can coaches do that? Do we need to hire other people? What benefit does this have to our business, to our bottom line? And of course, just build out the role eventually. And that comes with the maturity of the business too, but having that finger on the pulse of the projection and all that. When we're talking about, again, like a 1 year plan, and whatever the quote is, I'm like, people underestimate what they can do. And what's the actual quote? 5 years?
Yeah.
Or they overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in 5 years. I agree with that too. That's why I don't like the big long-term 10-year vision stuff, because I'm selling myself short. I have no idea what's possible. I never knew what we're doing today is possible, until probably about 2 years ago, right? And you're tracking some trends and you're doing this. And it's like, if I want to go open another location, this is probably the upside. This is what we could get to. It's like, all right, like, I know we could do that. I could go open a couple more right now. but do we have the team to do it? What problem is what I want to have? That's why it's like we're growing, every open location every year or two. Sorry, 18 months to 2 years, because ours are bigger operations for sure. Like we could go faster if we just wanted to take our adult model and open multiple studios, which I know some good buddies of mine are doing that and they're very successful. It works for them. That's not work. That won't work for me. Just like they said, like one of my buddies, Connor Flayhive, owns Flayhive Training out in Chicago area. He owns Flayhive Training is like one power track. They have adults and athletes, but then he took that model and made Flex Personal Training, which these other smaller studios, which he's the master at that. And a lot of people are talking to him, and he's great. He works he's a good buddy of mine, but works in the consulting with me with the gym Empire stuff. But like, he's like, you crazy. Like, I would never scale my main thing. Like, that's my baby. That's all I would do. But that has too many operational potential issues like that. I'm not built for that. And me, I kind of like the chaos. I have a high capacity for suffering with some of this stuff. Right. And so I love the process, and that's how my mind works. His is much more simple, and he wants to go do that. So we could go do that, but we choose not to. However, like, that's why I like what's possible in 3 years. Like, kind of know, right? Tell me Mark, what are you doing in 10 years? Like, I have no idea. Depends how this is going. Because now it's like you don't want to sell yourself short, but I also don't want to chase something. So if I say I'm going to do something, I'm probably going to do it. And so I don't want to say, hey, I'm going to do this in 10 years. It's like, now I'm just going to achieve it, even though it may not align with my not only passion, but also my core values, my goals at the time, because those are changing too. How am I going to act when I'm in 10 years when my kids are older? I don't know what I want to do. Like, I don't know what that's going to look like. I've never done it before. So I want to stay nimble, have a goal, have a vision, have a destination, but stay nimble with it. And I just look at that like they're almost like checkpoints, right?
Well, the other thing with a lot of people with the goals is, it's okay to have a vision. Like, this is what you're pushing for. And that vision, you kind of need to remove the metrics from, but if they're to have a goal, if it's business wise, that first goal is just to survive.
Yeah.
Don't go out of business. The first rule of business is don't go out of business.
Right.
And that's going to require that quarterly, if not daily, because if each month is trying to be better than year prior and 5 days are bad, well, you're screwed.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Yep.
So how do you reconfigure what that is, to be able to hopefully pull the quarter off?
Yeah.
So the goals kind of get replaced with metrics.
Yep.
And if you don't have the KPIs, scorecards or whatever it is, then you're just tracing a revenue goal.
Yeah.
Which I guess, nobody's ever gone out of business for having too much money.
That's why I try to tell people though too, because you'll get the profit monsters out there too, which you need profit. You need stuff, what's left over. I get it. Like, but like, it could be that could be really good for you. So percentages, right? Again, like, would you want a smaller percentage of something that's way larger, right? People get caught up with that because, my profitability is really high, but now it's like, but your revenue could be higher, but you're focused on this profitability number because now you're thinking of a scarcity mindset. I just got to pay this person less, or I got to cut this role. Like, it's like, instead, like, I like to think bigger, because you're right. Like, and that's exactly why I think this way. Yeah, I'm not going out of business because there's too much revenue, but give me the option to tell it where to go. Let me tell you that money where to go. Let me tell you what expenses we're going to pay, what we're not going to pay, because it's going to be aligned. I'd rather have that choice rather than not have enough, right? And try to justify it through, our profit margin is pretty good. It's like, yeah, but it's not big enough. A piece of the pie is not big enough to maybe make that next hire, to have the freedom you want. So you're going to live in no man's land until you finally start to get that top line to where it needs to be. And that's where you need to understand, like, what's the model? How many is it multiple locations, or is it one? Well, if it's one, then what are the limitations to that, and what could be detrimental? And let's make that as profitable as possible. Right. But I know certain years, like, our profitability is going to be down if I'm investing and reinvesting and doing all this stuff. And I got to hire this role, and they're not going to be, producing until X amount of time. Like, am I okay with that for right now? Or am I going to be so concerned with that percentage or two on the profitability that I don't want to pull the trigger on that? And sometimes it's yes or no. So I hope that makes sense a little bit, but you're right. It's like, I'm a big revenue type person, because with our metrics and our objectives that we're trying to achieve, that usually means we're heading in the right direction. And more of that means more opportunities that we can give to our team. And even if we just means, hey, there's more to go around, like, our managers can earn this, or now we can offer incentive plans to 10 people, not just 3, or whatever else it is. Like, that's kind of how we've been using. If there's anything in excess, we'll keep growing, keep expanding, upgrade facilities. We're building offices now in our existing places. We're not building buildings right now. We're building offices now to handle our staff that's growing, which we need to pay them more as well. So it's all those things of like, I'd rather take the top line and make that as big as possible and then have the choice for it.
Mm-hmm. I want to circle back to the credit line because I've seen countless gyms not have one, which, and then as I said, they're not going to give it to you when you actually need it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen many that had to rely on that at certain points. And if it wasn't for that, they would be closed.
Yeah.
And as you said, it's an ongoing conversation that you have to have with whoever your bank is or whatever it's going to be. And I would highly suggest you keep trying to push it, as much as you can. Yeah. I remember one conversation when I tried to push it where I had more capital, more cash in the bank than what our credit line was. And I just wanted to get it matched.
Yeah.
And it was a no.
Yeah.
And it was because I never used it, so that was another problem that comes in there. Yeah. But it was messing with my head. I'm like, no, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, you're taking my money here and loaning it out to all these other people. And all I'm asking for is the mirror of that.
I'm going to use that line, Rex. I go talk to I got a big bank and I got a smaller one.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to my smaller one's now higher than my big one. And my big one, every year I try to get more. I'm like, and it's like, no, I've been here with you. Your same thing. It's like, I'm with you for a long time, or I've been 13 years. I've been doing business with you. Like, I'm gonna try that one.
I pulled it.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a bigger bank. The same thing. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah,
right. And it's now this is the crazy part with banks. Had I been pulling on it regularly, even just to pull it out, put it back in 15 days later, it wouldn't have been a problem.
Yeah,
this is so stupid to me, but I don't understand that.
But that's what I'm saying. That's where it's like I work with he's a good friend of mine now, but personal CFO. He started off as more of an insurance guy. Now he's doing helps with my investments and all this extra stuff too. But he knows our business. And I wouldn't recommend having, you definitely need guidance with this. I would not pay someone to do this until you're at a certain level for sure. And I've passed them along to a couple of my buddies too. But he'll go fight some battles for me now, or it sounds different if someone's doing it on your behalf as well. So again, that's just and I never would have thought about that ever until it actually happens. And it's like, oh man, that worked. Or better yet, he says, don't worry about that. I'll have that conversation. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Let me know how it goes. And it's like, oh man, this is unique. This shows you what's possible with the right people in your corner. Now you pay that person, but hey, it's going to pay off years later. And I think that's where people go wrong with that's why it's such an abundance mindset. That you want to get bigger and you want to have a bigger business and operate at a higher level. It's going to get way more expensive to run. Hence why you have to dial in that service, those offerings, and your staff have to be totally on board with adhering to that, especially something as like the fitness industry, where again, you can walk a weekend later. Now you're competing with a certified trainer, or I'm competing with every online person that has a phone, right? So we have we have to show how we're a little bit different, and that's a fickle game to play.
Any other topics? Or you're working on the 5th gym now. So how's that moving?
It's not public yet.
Well, it is now.
We're working on it. We're working on something that hasn't been publicly announced. We'll announce that when it's truly finalized, not finalized. This will be a big different.
No, that's a good point though, right? Because a lot of people will announce things before it's actually ready to pull the trigger on, and then something happens, like your first one, right? So you don't want to do that.
Funny story. Now you mentioned that. I left this out. So while I'm coming down here in January of 2011, I forget how I got connected to the person, but we were going to, I always quote, play it safe. Which again, this works for some people, and that's why I was going to do it. I got this from some other mentors of mine, like, hey, why don't you just start small and find a place to operate out of an existing gym? And so I found a guy, and they had a back room on a more of a chain facility type thing, but they had this special back room, and we were going to go there. And oh, great! Like, when can I be back here? What time frame? I'm just training athletes, so we'll just be from this time to this time. Okay, great. And we were doing that, and I actually emailed it out. Again, this is 23-year-old Mark. Email out to the staff, coach kids' parents that I was working with, and we're doing this, and this is where it's going to be. This is when we're starting. And then I didn't really talk to the guy too much. Then went and checked in with him. Hey, we're starting in a month or whatever it was. And he's like, great. Oh, I'm going to need to see your client list, their contact info, all this stuff. Anyways, just got a bad feeling about it. And I'm like, yeah, that's not happening at all. And I was talking to my partner at the time. I called him up. I'm like, yeah, I just walked out. Like, we're not doing that. And he was just like, all right, well, let's do something else. And I'm like, and I was like, you don't understand. I already talked to these people. Like, we got to figure something out. All right, yeah, figure it out. Like, okay, well, let's figure it out. And I went home. It was close to my folks' house at the time. I went home to there, got on Craigslist and started searching for places. And I found our original garage that day. And I went and looked at it the next day. And in 2 weeks, we had it. Or about 2 to 3 weeks, we had it, moved it, we painted it and fixed it up in 3 days, and then opened the same. We were 1 day late from when I said we were going to start training them, but we just moved the location and had to go all in and actually get our own facility from the start. But I dabbled with that originally, and that showed me too. Number one, the fitness industry is shady. That guy was a shady dude. Glad it didn't happen because I was playing it safe, and it was the best thing that ever happened. It was put a little more risk on it, but like I said, I was able to take that risk. Again, ignorance is bliss, especially back then. I wanted to train people and have a spot to do it. Didn't really care how it happened. But we announced it before it was really secure. Yeah. So now, yeah, we're working on, again, always expand. Now it's like, we'll continue to expand as long as I have the right team. I feel like we have the right team, especially with, I shouldn't say just our leaders are most important, but also it's just, for me, it's the support staff, those younger trainers, right? They shouldn't have to wait 5-10 years to have opportunities. We have opportunities now. The system is strong. The oversight's strong. The education is there. So it's like, let's give them opportunities a little bit faster if they're willing to work and make that commitment, right? So we have that's strong. So now it's like, all right, well, where else could we go in our area and doing that? So we're exploring that, and that's going to be a bigger project. Again, it's an exciting thing that we're working on, and hopefully be finalized soon enough to talk about and announce. But it's definitely another circle on the comfort zone, you know, that's we're drawing here and expanding that comfort zone. And it's a big move. So, but I learned a ton through, going from 1 to 2, you learn a lot. I learned a ton from that. 2 to 3, I learned a good chunk too. And then 3 to 4 is like, you can't hide it anymore. This has to be systematized. You can't cover it. Because 1 to 2, I was covering it myself. And I didn't own a business then. I owned busyness. That became very evident. And I found that quote later. And then the third one, all right, I can rely on the team a little bit more. We can systematize this. At least the marketing had a good marketing in place. But even number 4, we learned even more in number 5. It's like, all right, our marketing definitely has to be in place. Our sales system definitely has to be in place. And our training system has to be the same no matter who's running it. So it's been able to, I like to have these things that we're working towards, which for us, it's opening new locations, because it's that short-term deadline, that short-term objective, right? To push our team to now. It's like, guys, expect change, right? People hate change, but growth and comfort can never coexist. So it's like, get uncomfortable expecting this to just happen. When this happens, like, no, other things are going to take place too, that you need to adapt to. And that's a good thing, you know? So what do we need to learn? What do we need to develop even better on? And then I can talk individually on them too. It's like, hey, for you to get to that next level, this is where I see you. This is where you need to develop. Are you willing to do that? Yeah. Okay, great. Well, I'm going to coach. Let's coach you up, and let's check in on this, because we're not going backwards, and this is only going to get tougher if you don't develop the skill. It's going to get tougher. You want it to be easier. Great. You know, and trying to make them, transformative, like mini gym owners. That's what I talk to them about. And they are like, that's what's really good. Our leaders, that is. And so, but without having this kind of embracing this expansion, I used to kind of think, oh no, we're done. That was more of a limiting factor on my own side. Now it's just like, well, yeah, we'll expand if it checks these boxes. If it's good, if we think it's good enough, otherwise, then let's do it. And can we make this be more of a fun thing to look forward to, or a fun thing to kind of set on? I say fun loosely because we got a lot of work before we do this, right? But it's only going to be better because of it, and it's going to enhance every single one of our locations beforehand. I'll say this too about scaling too, or scaling or growing or expanding. Like these other locations, like I've lost focus. I lost track of that before, where it's like, yeah, your new one's going well, but your old one took a hit. You have to factor that in sometimes. Maybe when you're going 1 to 2, and 2 to 3, those should both be operating at full speed before you go number 3. And number 4, that was because one of ours was blowing up, right? So it wasn't the fact that like, could we grow? This was a unique one because we were cannibalizing one of our locations.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth one, like we knew was going to grow. It was a great area. We had a great ties in the community, roots, all that kind of stuff. But it was like, all right, well, this one's going to take a hit. All right, well, how much and how long will it take to come back? And what are we going to do for that? So that was a little unique situation too, which is fun to deal with, which was kind of, in hindsight, made me a lot better to think that way, because so often people open facility, it's all about the launch and all about getting people in the door. And this was like, how do I get them in the existing facility? How do I members that are staying that aren't going, have a couple coaches that are leaving? How do they factor that? How do I make it from, they're going from a packed house to kind of maybe more, not as busy. All right, great. That's actually a good thing. Let's spin it that way. Let's communicate that. Oh, and by the way, like this is how we're going to up our service. This is what we're going to be able to do in the meantime. And that has rebounded really well too, faster than we anticipated. And I give the guys there a lot of credit, but also our whole team credit, because we operate as, again, like I said, we operate as one. This is the thing with training athletes. They could live over there where they play travel sports. They know everybody. The web is so big. So we can't have, it could be a detriment that we are so close and operate as one. Because if we screw up at one location, other locations, that could affect other locations without us even knowing it. So the standard is so high. That's why we can't slip up, because the result of that could be more detrimental than just having this one isolated incident in one location, especially with dealing with athletes that really know everybody. Mm-hmm. So the pressure is always on with that.
What's the best way for people to follow you?
I'm probably one of the worst. I need to up my game on the online presence. I'm one of the worst people to follow. Just because I'm in it. I like doing this, but there is I do find joy with it and I feel it's really passionate to help other coaches now too. I was always the type of guy to like, hey, I'm going to learn, I'm going to get the experience. I don't have an opinion yet. I don't have enough experience yet to share that opinion. And now it's like, all right, like, yep, we're doing it. It's time to go. But I'm still just, I like to be in my businesses and at home, but online, Power Strength Training Systems is www.powerstrengthpro.com, Power Strength TS on Instagram. Personal Instagram is Meathead Mark. And I want to change that, but it's so cool of a name now. I got that back in the day. I don't know how to tweak that, but, and then Build Your Gympire, Jim and Brasheen, the digital agency I work with. Build Your Gympire is the group that I'm involved with, helping to coach and do some business coaching through that. And if you want more information on them, just probably send me a message, or markennis.com is being made. It's being rejuvenated and out there too, just to kind of help contact people can contact, but you can fill out the form on that and get a hold of me too. All
right. We'll have the links in the description. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, I just really appreciate the honor, privilege of being on here, inviting me down to and be able to talk something. I know listeners are not used to maybe some of these discussions, but I think it's a huge platform to educate. Again, we got to educate and inspire, right? So it's like, if people are looking to start a gym, or they have one that's struggling, or it's one that's doing good, but they want to know what that next step is. I think having information like this out there, readily available from people that they trust, like yourself, I think that's really important. And it's a huge impact that's going to be made from doing stuff like this. I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you coming down, because I think it's important to have people who are actually doing it. Mm-hmm. And not the 30-second reel of the people faking that they're doing it.
Yeah.
To get the real information on what it's really like, instead of the fake crap that we see so much of.
It's in your intro, Dave, is like, you cut the bullshit. And that's part of one of the reasons why, if I want to look internally of like, hey, be more outspoken. Hey, go put yourself. I know you're comfortable just not doing your thing, and I'm focused on my businesses and my people in my business. Like, I never want to lose focus. I never wanted to give focus away from my staff, primarily in my brand. If it wasn't where it needed to be, I want to pour every ounce of energy into that, and they're doing a phenomenal job. Derek, Scott, Brian, Steve, Austin, and the whole rest of my staff doing a phenomenal job. But now it's like I keep seeing this stuff, like people are trying to make a quick buck off of, I think of my own person, like when I was 24, like I would have fallen for all of that stuff, right? I had great quality mentors, but those are harder to find now, let alone are people, what are they peddling, right? And are they actually doing it or not? And I think that's something that's really needed and important. It's probably one of my driving forces too, if I'm being honest. Like, all right, let's start talking about this more. Let's start being more. Let's get the information out there. Let's get the relationships being built, and get some quality content out there. People are actually doing it, not just trying to make a freedom-filled mobile lifestyle for themselves, right? And then peddle the same old stuff. I'm still learning every single day, definitely every single month and year. I'm actually dealing with daily problems. And that's something too. I think people understand, like, the rate of learning is so high. Like, if you're not good at something, then do more of it. I'm looking at 5 P&Ls right now, right? 4 locations and then one for the company. If you're not good at that, you're getting more reps and more reps over and over. Hey, I'm leading 30 people, not just 3 anymore. A lot more members. You're going to have a lot more issues that pop up and deal with. So it's like, how do you take all that? And if I'm blessed to have those, really the experience and the knowledge that comes with that experience, then what am I not doing, like, withholding that? I gotta be able to share that a little bit. I feel like that's what I'm called to do a little bit, but it all comes back from what you said of, like, yeah, you got to find people that are trustworthy to be able to do that. And so just like you guys paved the way for people like me and that to do that. If I can pick up the slack there, I'm more than happy to do so.
All right. I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yep.
We're done. You don't want to leave people stranded. If we're going to do this, because somebody's going to have to always be there. Yeah. One of us would have to always be there because it was a different.
At the time, all of us started training pretty much together.
You were one of the first, just to start training some of the lifts somewhere else. And your deadlift, went through like 100 pounds.
For me,